Rotoscouts baseball fans, welcome to the show, gang. Wednesday, happy hump day. Looks like a good crew already hanging out in the chat. Just taking care of a couple last minute lineup confirmations that dropped just as I was about to click start a minute ago. Got the Diamondbacks in with a couple interesting little changes at the bottom of the lineup. Guardians rolling with a straightforward one, but just added those to the model here so we can talk about a lot of lineups already in. Pretty interesting looking slate to go through. 8-gamer tonight on both sites. There's a lot of pitchers, but there's not necessarily a lot of great options. There's a couple really good potential bargain spots, but they're a little bit shaky. There's a couple great options at the top of the board if we're talking about the expensive ones. A couple really, really strong looking hitting spots as well. Interesting night last night baseball-wise. Had another dominant start by Paul Skeens. Had a huge day from the Yankees offense. Big day at the end of the night for the Dodgers. They, I think they scored the same as the Yanks. Did they both score 10? Am I remembering the final scores correctly? I think they ended up in the top lineups in FanDuel, that combination. For a while, it was looking like it was going to be Yankees-Rockies. Rocks ended up hitting a couple of those home runs that we were looking for. But it was an interesting day. We didn't quite get there with, what's his face? Drew Thorpe, the young pitcher in his debut. Good start, not a great start. 5 solid innings. I think he struck out 4, gave up earned run and unearned run, couple of hits. Not a disaster by any means, but not quite as sharp as we were hoping for. Needed another couple of Ks or another inning pitch to make it really, really worthwhile. Based on where he was priced, record heat, 78 degrees, that doesn't sound right. Based on where he was priced for June 12th, that can't be right. It was potentially there for you, but a lot of different ways that slate could have broken. Not sure exactly how it scored out on the DraftKings slate. Hopefully somebody out there took something down, though. A lot of things we talked about on the show, a lot of things we had projected kind of came through on that one, including that Rockies value. So hopefully you guys had a successful day, and I think it's time to pull this up and target today. Cujo Blues here. What's going on, Cuj? Andy Melman, Aloysius, Clint Woods here. What's up, y'all? Andy says hopefully we all smash tonight's slate. I'll agree with that. Matthew Patterson, good day. Lone Wolf, good to see you. Stephen Leibowitz, happy hump day, buddy. Hopefully everybody's work week is going well. I don't know what emoji that's supposed to be for Aloysius. I mean, I can guess at what it's supposed to look like, but the description of it came up funny. Because I just get, like, the description. It's 4 different hyphenate description. Pride, person, flower, non-binary. Pride, person, flower, non-binary, back to you, my friend. Happy Pride Month, all who celebrate. Guardians and the Reds on the top one. We've got the both lineups confirmed in that, but let's pull up the Vegas board. Male Nurses Rock 2, off an hour early. That's awesome. Week's going well. Good to hear it. So that Guardians and Reds game from the top. Interesting matchup there. Kind of even up on the Vegas board. Nick Lodolo against Tanner Bybee. 2 pretty good young pitchers. 8-run total in that ballpark. Pretty reasonable total there. 4.02 on the Guardians side. 4.06 on the Red side. I don't love either pitcher. They both project out just fine, but not really as well as they might if this was played in like a neutral park. I think you get a little bit more juice to the pitchers. So it's a really interesting one. We're going to take a hard look at both options there. Both pitchers are easily on the board, but the bats aren't unplayable either. Those are reasonable totals for this slate. You can see really only the Yankees standing out among the away teams pretty dramatically, and then this whole run of home teams actually pulling in pretty decent totals. Some of it based on like bad lineup against a mediocre pitcher. We'll get there in a sec, though. The Marlins at the Mets. Another interesting matchup. David Peterson, who has been okay, but not effective for strikeouts in his first 2 starts back, was striking out some guys in his AAA rehab appearances. And he's facing Braxton Garrett, who has been up and down, let's say, in his return to action. He had a couple really good starts, including a 9-inning, 4-hit shutout against the Diamondbacks at Arizona, in which he struck out 6. But then he's also had a couple of meltdowns. 5 runs in his first start back to the Phils, 6 runs to this Mets team in his second start back, and then in his most recent outing on the day we were talking about him, gave up 5 earned runs over 2 2/3 to the Rays. So it's been a little bit shaky for Braxton Garrett, but you can see 7.5 run total in the game, 3.42 going to the Marlins side. So Vegas likes the David Peterson spot a little bit, and at least it's got some matchup potential. And 4.17 on the Mets side, not exactly running away with a gigantic total. So there's got to be at least a little bit of juice for Braxton Garrett to have a better day than some of these have been. Phillies against the Red Sox, an 8-run total there. Phil's going up against Nick Pivetta. Christopher Sanchez going for Philadelphia. The Phils pulling a 4.17 implied total. Red Sox not too far behind at 3.92. Two pretty good, talented pitchers going in this one. We've seen Pivetta get fully stretched out. He threw 7 innings and struck out 9, walked 2 in a 1-hit outing against Atlanta his last time out. Atlanta, by the way, scored the least runs in Major League Baseball since April 24th, I think I saw. Pretty sure that was the date. Pretty shocking for that team. But, yeah, that one, the Phillies and Red Sox, going to be interesting to look at bats there. Not a great park for bats, but both teams, decent offenses kind of suppressed to fairly low run totals. I think you can get away with some Phillies. On the right day, Pivetta is gettable. On the other side, the Red Sox, the lesser of the two lineups, but they're getting Tyler O'Neill back. They got Yoshida back last night. I forget whether he's in today's lineup. We'll take a look in a second. But potentially playable offenses there as well. The Pirates against the Cardinals. This is one that you got to have faith in the Cardinals, who have been so shaky for most of the year. A couple of bats kind of coming around, including Nolan Gorman, who's been on a tear for power, or at least was, over the past 10 days or the last 14 days or whatever it's been. He's hit a decent number of home runs. Going up against Bailey Falter for the Pirates. They're pulling a 4.86 implied total. Had to give them a little nudge up the stack board based on their, how their projections math out. So I'm not wholly confident in them, but they look pretty good matchup-wise, Vegas total-wise, and there are some definitely playable bats. Underperformances for sure. You guys know who they are. But definitely worth a look in this spot. And then the Pirates on the other side going up against Sonny Gray, one of the top projected pitchers on the entire slate. 3.75 implied total for Pittsburgh. Doesn't really look like a spot to get the Pirates bats. Just kind of favors the Cards. It is another spot, though, where, I've talked about it a few times lately, where St. Louis's implied total, to me, is kind of taking a lot of weight out of Sonny Gray just being pretty favored against this Pirates lineup. So just the math, the way this line is, kind of gives St. Louis a little bit more on the run line. I could see something more like that being a little bit more accurate. It's just a matter of that half run. And the last couple ones we've looked at like this have ended up coming down by the end of the night. So just keep an eye on that. If that run comes down to 8, it diminishes the opportunity a little bit on the St. Louis side. And I think it's more realistic to have it around there. But, again, Bailey Falter, eminently gettable starter. Then there's the Yankees. They're going up against Dan Altavilla, who is going to be an opener for about an inning. He pitched just the other day in an inning of relief. His return to the major leagues after it's been 2021 was the last time he had pitched in the show. Debuted all the way back in 2016. Anyway, he'll be in for an inning, probably get destroyed. And then Daniel Lynch plans on coming in to face this Yankees lineup, which could be just an epic disaster. An 11-run total. Yankees pretty heavily favored. A 6.14 is the highest run total on the board. That said, the Royals are not uninteresting on the other side of this one. 4.97, call it 5 runs basically. They're going up against Cody Poteet, who has not been completely terrible. He's not a great DFS option. He's very low strikeout on the, by and large. Did have a good 6 strikeout performance against the Giants. Last time out, faced the Dodgers. Had a surprisingly effective 4 2/3 in which he gave up just 2 hits, no runs. But he only struck out 1 and he walked 3. Kind of coasted through on a little bit of luck there. So Not really loving Cody Poteet as an option, and think the Royals are definitely playable given that run total, the second highest run total on the board. The Angels, the Diamondbacks, 4.38 implied total for Arizona, facing Jose Soriano. The Angels flashing some odd power. We'll see what the final lineup looks like against Slade Ciccone, who is definitely gettable for home run upside. He's given up at least one home run in every one, except for one start, in all but one of his starts this year, and multiple home runs in 2 starts. So I think he is realistically targetable with some cheap Angels bats. It might be a situation like what we were talking about with the Rockies yesterday, where they're cheap, they've got some home run potential, but don't necessarily string together a ton of hits and runs against him. So maybe it's a better source of mini stacks, one-offs, and so on and so forth. That said, with the Rockies yesterday, they got a home run out of Tovar, a home run out of McMahon, and somebody else did something good. So there were like 3 high scorers in the Rockies lineup, but still, again, not the top stack. But if you get 3 high scoring guys, or if you pick off the right 2 guys at cheap prices, depending on your build, there could definitely be value there. So the Angels are worth a look tonight. 3.71 implied total. Vegas kind of agrees with that. Like, they might score some runs. Maybe they catch a home run in there. 3 to 5 runs, though, from that team. That's what I'm saying, why it might not be the best, like, full stack spot. White Sox against the Mariners, the day's most highly projected pitcher, Bryce Miller, going for Seattle. Looks pretty terrific today. That White Sox lineup, just any given slate, is going to be crazy targetable. And then Jonathan Kennan coming back the other way facing the Mariners. 4.61 implied total for them, just a 2.99 implied total for Chicago on the other side. Miller looks terrific. He's going to be insanely popular and worthwhile on both sites. Kennan, not so much, probably pretty targetable with Mariners bats. He's very, very cheap. I was trying to find good ways to justify it, and it's pretty thin looking, even in terms of just a guy facing that Mariners lineup. It's nowhere near as appealing as Drew Thorpe yesterday. Let's put it that way. Rounding things out, the Rangers and the Dodgers, an 8-run total there. 3.46 implied total for the diminished Rangers lineup. They're facing Walker Buehler, a very talented pitcher. He's been a little bit up and down in his, what are we talking about now, 6 starts back. At least 3, exactly 3 earned runs allowed in 5 of those 6 starts. The one outlier start, he allowed no earned runs on 3 hits to Cincinnati, struck out 7. He's gone 6 innings twice. Both of those games he struck out 7. One of those games he gave up 3 earned runs to Colorado. His last 2 games he's given up 4 runs, with 3 of them being earned, 1 home run. It's been mixed, and those came against Colorado and Pittsburgh in 2 pretty strong-looking DFS spots. But no reason to think that Walker Buehler couldn't succeed, or at least couldn't keep the Rangers down to mid-3s, 3 to 5 run kind of an output. And then coming back the other way, John Gray, also the potential in the right spot to be an effective pitcher and limit the offense on the other side. So he's got the Dodgers at just 4.64. That said, it is the Dodgers. There's a lot of DFS upside basically any given slate for them. Pitching board looks thusly. You can see one gigantic value meatball right there that we're going to talk about in detail in a minute. David Peterson on both sites looks pretty tremendous. I don't know if there's a gigantic ceiling just based on how he's been finishing hitters off in terms of actually putting away strikeouts over his first 2. But he's been a good strikeout pitcher over time throughout his career, and a pretty underrated talent overall. Does give up some premium contact, some power, so maybe a little bit of outlier power showing on the Marlins side. But given the fact that he's pitched basically full innings in his first 2 back, I think there's plenty of upside there for Peterson going up against Miami at those prices. I kind of like that as the value option du jour. You can see he's surrounded by much higher priced pitchers. If you've got the money, Bryce Miller is a fantastic option at $9,000 on DraftKings. That is underpriced. He's given up some runs. He's given up a little bit of power this year, but overall, he's a very, very good pitcher against a ridiculously bad lineup that he's got checked under 3 runs on the board in Vegas. So $9,000 is just too cheap for that spot, for that talent. He's easily the SP1 on DraftKings. It's more debatable between 10-3 for him and 11,000 on the FanDuel slate for Sonny Gray against Pittsburgh. An equally good spot, or not equally good. The White Sox are way worse than Pittsburgh. But Sonny Gray is of equal talent there. So that's an interesting spot. for similar-ish money on the FanDuel slate. For the salary difference of 1,000 on DraftKings, where it matters a little bit more, I tend to favor the Miller option. But Sonny Gray, very, very playable there for 10,000. Pivetta against Philly, I really don't love. It's there. He's got the talent, sure. It's not a great ballpark for pitching. He definitely can succeed in this spot. But that is a very good Phillies lineup, even with some recent diminishments. So I don't love that spot. You can see it projects under 30 FanDuel points, 15 DK points. It's a nice projection. It's better on DK probably for the 90. Well, that's pretty close salary-wise. I don't know. It's just a little tough drawing against that Phillies team. Let's put it that way. These two guys, just the ballpark, as I was saying, kind of holding them down slightly. Lodolo for 10.8 doesn't project near these guys, so there's a pretty big gap for him on FanDuel. It's a lot closer on DraftKings where everybody's in this kind of a range. I just don't love taking out shares against that low strikeout, pretty effective Cleveland offense, but he is a very talented pitcher. Tanner Bybee, it's similar. There's more strikeouts available, I think, for him in the Cincinnati lineup. It's still a bad ballpark. He's been a little bit up and down this year. So it's another one where I believe in the projection, but I don't fully trust the pitcher not to get dinged here. So they're playable, but they're definitely not low risk. Braxton Garrett, based on the up and down performances so far, I don't really know what to expect, but I do think this is correct in terms of a median projection with some upside on it against a decent Mets offense. I'm going to give them that much. I think there's some talent there. But Garrett's good. He's. I know he's been shaky. I know I said he was good the last time out, and he completely blew up. But I stand by it. Braxton Garrett is good. So could be a spot that pays off at a fair value price. Probably the second best value option on the board. And really the only other realistic one. Maybe pay off Slate Ciccone. It's not that dissimilar a projection for a little bit of a salary dip. But like I said, he really hasn't been all that good. He's pretty low strikeout. There are plenty of strikeouts in that Angels lineup, but they're also flashing some power. So I really do think that Garrett is probably the second most realistic value play. Walker Buehler, though, for 500 more on the FanDuel slate, targeting a weakened Texas lineup, it's not a terrible option. If we're talking about like value pitchers, I mean, he is a very talented pitcher. Just got to find his form, really. But it's a good mid-range projection for a fair mid-range price. Jose Soriano, I don't love against that Diamondbacks team, but again, it's a fair mid-range price, fair mid-range projection. It's fine. This whole group right here is perfectly fine to go to in any level of exposure. Pick your poison amongst the matchups. Obviously, some of these matchups are better than others. You'd rather face the Angels in most cases than the Rangers, the Diamondbacks, or even the Mets. John Gray obviously stands out for a bad matchup against the Dodgers. Also 8,800, 7,700, more expensive than the guys above him in the projections. So it's just kind of a why would you spot. But that's not to say that John Gray doesn't have the talent to go 6 innings of clean baseball and find 5-6 strikeouts against the Dodgers on the right day. He is that level of pitcher. It's just not the most reliable in the world for at least the strikeout upside. So I don't love the spot at price. If he was in, even this range, I guess he is on DraftKings a little bit more. FanDuel, not so much. 77 on DraftKings. It's just the Dodgers of it that really is in the way. Chris Sanchez just really not drawing a strong projection against that Red Sox team. So for the money, I don't love it. Not a fan of the ballpark. But he's been pretty good this year. So I'm curious to look at that one. Maybe I need to give him a nudge before the final projections deadline. As if somebody's imposing a final projections deadline before lock. Let's put it that way. I said let's put it that way like 6 times already on this show. I'm going to try and stop doing that. Bailey Falter going against St. Louis. There's believable potential for success. He's had a couple of good days in amongst a bunch of bad ones. And that Cardinals team has been pretty bad and pretty targetable. But they are drawing a very high total and seem realistic on today's slate for some DFS shares. Cody Poteet again going up against KC. I don't love it. He is 6,900 on the DraftKings slate. That seems a lot more playable than 83 on FanDuel. I think that's borderline unplayable at that price on FanDuel. That's absurd. Um, 69 makes a lot more sense on DraftKings. It's still not good, but it's a dart maybe you could throw a few times if you just want to diversify. Like, I'm going to dedicate 50 shares to value pitchers, and I want to diversify who those are. So maybe you play Bailey Falter and Cody Poteet, 5 times each and something like that. Probably more like 2.5, 3 times each. Jonathan Cannon, Daniel Lynch, Dana Altavilla kind of nose at the bottom of the board. Cannon is the potential curveball against that Mariners team in that. So the first game up, this Reds ballpark. Actually, forgot to check the weather today. Let me do that real quick. How you guys doing out there? What's going on? Lone was saying hi to Joker. Yeah, he just walked over to his bed across the room here. Lone Wolf likes a Garrett and Peterson stack with the Yankees. It's one way to go. Let's see what Mr. Roth has to say about the weather over at RG. So, looks like there's some potential rain in Boston. And that's the only one. The KC game, in addition to having the Yankees against Daniel Lynch and an opener, apparently is hot and humid with winds out to left at 10 miles an hour. So even more reason to support that upside. That's all per Mr. Roth at Kevin Roth WX on Twitter. So it seems like we're clean in this one. Tanner Bybee, 8,800, 9,000. Draws, again, a fair mid-range, upper mid-range projection for not a bad price. Going up against a Reds lineup that has a 23.8% strikeout rate in it. There's plenty of potential for Bybee to find success. 3.73 ERA on the season with a 3.61 xFIP, basically pitching like exactly what he looks like. 12.5% swinging strike rate, resulting in a 25.9% strikeout rate with a 6.5% walk on 27.4% CSW. There's a little bit more potential upside there. Last year he was at 24.1% K, 7.7% walk, so he's already made some improvements. He's pushed the swinging strike rate up a little bit. It's just over the league average if you're measuring by Stuff Plus, but a couple effective pitches in there. Very good at limiting premium contact so far this season, despite being a fly ball pitcher. 70 innings in 13 starts. Seems like a pretty playable spot outside of just a little bit, again, of concerns about the ballpark. Not that he's been overly vulnerable to home runs. 7 strikeouts in 5 innings against Kansas City in his last one. Just gave up 3 runs, 2 earned on 6 hits. 7 strikeouts again before that against a somewhat stingy Washington team over 6 1/3. He's got 4 quality starts in a row. He's really only gotten blown up, depending on your definition of blow up. 5 runs in 4 1/3 against the White Sox all the way back on April 10th. That was a bad one. 6 runs against the Angels over 5 innings on May 3rd, and then 4 runs against the Tigers. So he's been pretty bad 3 times against bad teams. But this Reds team is good, so maybe that means he'll be good. Maybe he's a guy who steps up for the competition. Regardless of how you slice it, he is definitely playable. So is Lodolo. It's just a matter of what kind of investment do you want to make with some better-looking spots that'll be more popular above him. But again, there's not much separation between these options and several of these. For Lodolo, 26.3% strikeouts over 52 1/3 in 9 starts, 2.92 ERA with a 3.55 xFIP. Little bit of separation between how he looks on the surface and what he's done under the covers, but very similar numbers to Bybee across the way. 12.7% swinging strikes for him, 5.6% walk rate, throwing more overall strikes than Bybee does, 31.3% CSW compared to the 27.4. That's a pretty big difference. Similar for limiting contact so far this year. Both have fly ball trajectories, but have limited barrels, limited hard hits and exit velo, limited home run output. So, again, either direction you want to go here, I think both pitchers are very, very playable. They've got both these pretty decent offenses checked to just over 4 runs. We're not under 4 runs. So there's a difference there between like that and, what the Marlins are at, what the Pirates are at. So there's a little bit of an uptick just on the quality of these teams. But both pitchers getting respect on the Vegas board. Lodolo struck out 7 over 6 innings against the Cubs in his last outing, gave up 1 earned on a solo homer, 4 hits. 2 earned runs in 6 innings to start before that. He's got 2 quality starts in his last 4. They came in the last 2 games. Went 5 1/3 with 1 run allowed, just 3 strikeouts against St. Louis in a game before that. Then gave up 4, but went 6 innings in the game before that at San Francisco. It's been a little bit up and down, but for him, the most runs he's allowed is 4. So he's limited any damage in his 9 starts. So again, effective options either way. But Cleveland, the lower strikeout of the 2. So for me, that and the pricing difference, if I'm determined to go to a pitcher in this game, it would just lead me to Bibee and the strikeout upside against the Reds, rather than taking a more expensive Lodolo with similar strikeout stuff, similar strikeout output this year against a much lower strikeout Guardians team. Stephen Kwan at the top of the Guardians lineup, a great way to get a Guardians stack started. And I do think with a 4+ runs showing for both of these teams on just kind of a weird day, especially if either one of these pitchers starts to get a little bit popular, I think both of these offenses can be targeted here. These pitchers aren't unhittable. They're both good. I prefer the pitching, but the ballpark favors hitting. The lineups are both pretty decent, pretty playable. The Guardians flashing a little bit more power as well as a threat to Lodolo. A couple of really good righties in there for power. Josh Naylor showing a 11.16 in the home run model despite the lefty-lefty of it. So Kwan again at the top, great way to get started, 5,000, 3,500. He's slashing 380, 446, 538, creating runs 86% better than average from the leadoff spot over 178. It's a killer option to have for them at the top of the lineup, returning after, what did he come back, like a couple weeks ago? Week or 2, 10 days, somewhere in there. It's great to have him back at the top of this lineup. Tyler Freeman for 38-31, 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases, creating runs 2% better than average. Putting decent bat on ball, not great, not as outrageous as it's supposed to be, but making okay contact, 39.8%, and striking out just 15.3% of the time, drawing a few walks. He's been decent with, I think, a fair chunk of upside for more as the hit tool comes around. 6,400, 4,400 in this spot for Jose Ramirez is a decent price. Plenty of power potential, 18 home runs, 11 steals, 275 ISO, a 46% better than average WRC+. It's a tremendous star at third base. You can absolutely play him against Nick Lodolo. David Fry with catcher eligibility on DK is interesting, 5,600, right-handed power, 43.1% hard hits on the season, just striking out at a 17.9% clip while drawing 14.8% walks over 162. He's hit 8 home runs with a 248 ISO. Not a bad option at all. 3,300 on FanDuel still feels pretty cheap, given what he's done so far this season. I think overall it cools as things go along. It's already begun to cool somewhat from the outrageous numbers over the first couple of weeks. But he's been consistently good over 162 now. Like there's some reality to it. Andres Jimenez, 4,800, 3,200, effectively priced. He's got 4 home runs and 10 steals, just below average for run creation. He's good, not great, but he fits in at second base for a cheap price in the heart of this lineup. So never really shy about it. Lefty-lefty for Jimenez. What's he at this year? At 288, 329, 397 lefty this year with a 110 ISO, 111 WRC+. Against righties, he's been worse. 0.096 ISO, 94 WRC+. For his career, less power against same-handed pitching, but definitely better average, better on base for his full career so far. 283, 341, 410 against fellow lefties. 257, 326, 408 against righties. So an ISO difference of 127 against lefties versus 151. But he's got a better WRC+, 116 versus 108 against same-handed pitching. So no issues lefty-lefty. You're just diminished for power, but he's already not a great power bat anyway. So I think Jimenez is effective there and could potentially, people are skipping him because there's a lefty on the mound, could potentially be a little bit sneaky in this spot. Gabriel Arias, 31.25, a little bit cheaper with multi-position eligibility. Some believable power upside despite a lack of realistic output this season, just 213, 248, 336 with a 123 ISO, pretty bad WRC+ over 129. but there is lurking power there from the right side. Brian Rocchio, Austin Hedges, just mix and match parts at best at the bottom of the lineup. Rocchio's got 7 stolen bases. Hedges, over 57 plate appearances, is 99% worse than average grading runs. Good thing he hit that home run and stole that base, I guess. On the Reds side, I like the power upside from TJ Friedl, Ellie De La Cruz, Jay Candelario at the top of the lineup. There's some interesting bats on this team. If Bibee comes out and gives up just a little bit of extra pop today, certainly on a fly ball trajectory that can get out of this stadium in an awful hurry. That said, you can see his ability to limit premium contact somewhat in where those home run marks are for those guys. Ellie just a 5.70 to lead the team. Candelario at 4.90. TJ Friedl 4.80. Those are all guys who can turn on the ball and definitely hit it out of the park. Steers also got power. He's at 4.23. He's got 7 home runs this year. Ellie leads the team with 11. Candelario's up to 9 after a slow start. TJ Friedel's got 3 after just 76 plate appearances. So there's pop up there. They're a fairly priced group of hitters as well. Ellie's the only expensive one on the team. And he's justifiably high priced. He's a ridiculous multi-category contributor. He's obviously, an up and down player. As we've talked about, he's a very different hitter right-handed versus left-handed. There's plenty of reason to chase the upside for him today, though. Again, Tanner Bibee, good, but a tick down, I think, from the premium pitchers. He's a very solid BB plus. Second starter, third starter, definitely second starter, probably. But he's a slight tick down from some of the top talent. So he's gettable. Got to have a good day against, but there's a little bit of sneakiness here to the Reds. Spencer Steer still eligible at second base on FanDuel for 33 is great. First base, playable, 5,000 on the DraftKings slate. A little bit of power, some stolen base upside. Creating runs 9% better than average. A lot of good run creation going on in this Reds lineup so far. Only over 50 plate appearances. Hurtubise, below average so far for run creation. Bottom couple guys, 101 WRC plus for India. Will Benson, 102 WRC plus. I prefer Will Benson and his skill set. He's got a lot of power. He's got some stolen base upside. Just a lot of strikeouts, 39.1% strikeouts. But you can see the great premium contact that he makes from the bottom spot. So I like a cheap Will Benson down here. I like him as a wraparound. He's effective enough to do that from the bottom of the lineup. India is playable, but also very, very skippable. So is Hurtubise. Tyler Stevenson for 3,800, especially if you're stacking Reds. Definitely should be in your lineups on DraftKings. There's a lot of lurking power there. He's got 6 home runs on the season, a 163 ISO, but makes killer contact. So I like the upside for Tyler Stevenson. If you're going to the Reds, he's kind of a priority bat under the DraftKings slate. He's playable on FanDuel at 3,000. You're not really blocking anybody from first base because of the multi-position on those guys. But it's definitely a better DraftKings spot. If you're just looking at him as a one-off, it's not the best because, again, Bibee is good. It's a playable catcher one-off, but there's probably better spots. So both pitchers, Bibee favored over Lodolo just based on the lower prices with very, very similar projections. And what I think is the better matchup with some strikeout upside showing. The Guardians showing a little bit more power against Lodolo, and they're much lower strikeout, so it lessens his opportunity. Obviously, a bad ballpark for pitching. And then Guardians offense over the Reds offense, but I do think both teams are playable at very similar low 4s run totals. How's Bibee red and Lodolo is green when he's 800 more and has 0.5 more fantasy points? These are just comparing to one another. So it's just a binary red light, green light between those two pitchers. Where I guess the FanDuel one is just closer. I'm not sure why this one would be comparing differently. But you can effectively ignore the conditional formatting in a lot of ways. It's just kind of for me to be able to spot things. And just to keep the board not just looking like columns and columns of numbers. It just helps it make it look a little bit better. But especially, for the hitters, it's just comparing one side to the other. So you're not getting the full, standout of where the guy lands against the entire slate by just looking at the colors. It's just kind of a guide rail there. But yeah, that's definitely just comparing one to the other. And it's not impacted by the price at all. That's just raw comparing those numbers. This, I'm not sure why that would be similarly projected. How does it look on the next game? Let's see. Yeah, same thing. So there's more. I guess the FanDuel one I had set up to compare to the entire slate probably for those. This is not worth trying to do right now, but AJ 20, AJ 36. Oh, I think it's got pitching projections stashed over there that it's looking at. I'll figure that out during the shows. It's actually probably worth changing over here if I can figure out how to make that work, how I made it work years ago over on this side where it compares to the full slate. I'll see if I can change that up. And if I can, I'll actually do it for the hitters as well. Anyway, second game up. No, Fanatic, no worries, but it was a good question. And definitely worth looking at for a sec there. Travis Wyndham's here. What's up, Trav? Falter and Sanchez asks, Gophius, we'll call him. I know what he's going for. I'm gonna kind of lean no, based on where they're at, like as a pairing. Sanchez has more upside for sure, in my opinion. He's the far better of those two pitchers. Obviously, in the worst matchup against Boston in that park. Just didn't project well. We're going to get to him in a minute. But that's one I do want to take a look at. But yeah, that's not the best pairing. I don't really expect a lot out of Falter. The Vegas board doesn't really expect a lot out of Falter with the cards drawing a 4.86 against. And there are better value spots, in my opinion, above him there. So maybe not the best pairing. Nice save. I don't know what you mean. Oh, like on the name? Yeah. Like I said, I knew what it was, and I was just trying to figure out how to say it. Like not get dinged by anybody. Braxton Garrett, 7,100, 7,300. He's very, very cheap for his talent. Despite some struggles here, 5.81 ERA over 5 starts and 26 and a third. And like I said, has gotten nailed a couple times in this brief return to action. 5 runs against the Phils, 6 runs against the Mets, and then the most recent time, like I said before, 5 runs against the Rays. Willing to go right back to the well with him, quite honestly, for these prices. He's got a 21.1% strikeout rate over that stretch. He's only walked 3.5% of hitters. The xFIP is great at 3.47. There's a gigantic difference between those in a small sample. Swinging strikes aren't great. CSW is not great, but we're not far below average there. The Stuff Plus hasn't graded out well at all. He's given up tons of hard hit and exit velo, but it's on a low launch angle, so he is a pitcher who can limit premium contact that way. He was effective at doing that last year. Give up a 3.03% home run rate. There's a little bad luck even in that high a number, given the 7.4 degree average launch. But it looks like with a 7.8% barrel, when he made mistakes last year, they got hit for home runs. But he was a little bit more effective for strikeouts, more effective for strike throwing overall last year. Had a 3.66 ERA and a 3.42 xFIP, and again, a very low walk rate. So this is a good pitcher that we're talking about. He's just, as he's stretching back out after missing everything before May 12th this year, made a few rehab starts in the minors to begin the season. Just getting fully back to form. In that good start against the Diamondbacks, he threw a complete game 4-hit shutout, 6 strikeouts. That's the upside. He's got that in him. He could certainly get this Mets team. That said, they're improving. They're rolling out a very heavily right-handed lineup against. Definitely looking to exploit the righty-lefty here. And they've got some good righties in that lineup. 20.4% strikeout rate so far this year for that confirmed lineup for the Mets. Last year, same group of hitters, 22.3% in a slightly larger sample for a lot of guys. So definitely maybe a little bit of lurking strikeout upside for Braxton Garrett, but either way, it's not dramatic. But it's there, league average-ish. So 5-6 strikeout upside if he gets through 6 innings. The potential to book a quality start against this team. The win is probably in play. What was the... I know they're not favored, but yeah, it's not a... it's fairly heavily favored for the Mets. I think there's maybe a little bit more juice than that for the Marlins for the win if Garrett is pitching well. And if he's not pitching well, then it doesn't matter. So for the money, he's on the board. So is David Peterson. And Peterson is more emphatically on the board because, for one, he's lower priced than Garrett on the other side. For two, he's been a better strikeout pitcher throughout his career than Garrett has on the other side. And he's just got the better matchup going up against this Marlins squad. So I think he is very, very interesting today. You can see the 2 starts back, 11 2/3, just a 10% strikeout rate. Hasn't finished hitters off in his return to action in those 2 starts. One was against the Nationals. He went 6 2/3. That was the most recent one. Struck out just 2, but again, that's a somewhat stingy team on the right day, especially against the lefty. Gave up 2 earned runs and 5 hits, no homer, walked 2. Faced the Dodgers in his first start back. Went 5, 2 earned runs, gave up a homer, 3 runs overall on 7 hits. Struck out just 3, walked 1. So it hasn't really been peak output from David Peterson. In his minor league rehab starts, 6 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts, 7 strikeouts, going back over the last 4 starts before he came back up to the show. And if we look back in time, last year over 111 innings and 21 starts, a 26% strikeout rate, a bumpy 5.03 ERA with a high walk rate, but a good xFIP, very good strike thrower, or inducer of swinging strikes anyway. Definitely can give up some premium contact, but keeps the ball down effectively. So it's very similar on both sides with these guys, with a little bit more strikeout upside for Peterson. 2 years ago, 27.8% strikeouts, even better. Over 105 2/3 in 19 starts. Similar low launch angle, low home run totals, despite some premium contact. Good ERA, good xFIP. I'm telling you, Peterson is a very, very good option for how cheap he is today. 3rd most highly projected pitcher on the board for some of the lowest prices available. Looks like a killer. Could completely go bust. Probably good reason if you're building a ton of lineups, if you grab a huge chunk of David Peterson, or on the other side, if you grab a huge chunk of Braxton Garrett to hedge with these offenses. I don't think you need to get carried away with either team. The Mets at a low 4s total and the Marlins at mid 3s. The Mets are the better of the 2 teams, kind of duh statement there. It's an interesting version of their lineup. Lindor, usual spot at the top. You get Harrison Bader moving up to the 2 spot against the lefty. That's kind of a wacky one. He's been okay. 263, 315, 363. 3 home runs, 8 steals. Below average WRC+, medium contact. Fairly low strikeout, low walk. He's just okay. He does have a knack for big moments for whatever reason. So, call him clutch or whatever. And that makes people think that he's better than he is overall. But it's at least an interesting spot for a right-handed hitter in that lineup. And he does have multi-category skills with speed and with a little bit of power. JD Martinez in the 3 spot is really interesting. 15.8% barrel so far, 47.5% hard hits this year. 5 home runs and 160 plate appearances, a 171 ISO with definitely room to improve those numbers based on that contact and based on what we know about JD Martinez over time. 4,100 is very cheap on DraftKings for his ceiling. 3,000 is effectively cheap on FanDuel. 51 for Pete Alonso is pretty cheap. 13.5% barrel rate, 14 home runs at 232 ISO so far. Just doing Pete Alonso things and carrying on at first base regardless of what goes on around him on this Mets team. 3,500 on the FanDuel slate, very playable. Starling Marte is hitting the ball really hard so far this year. 236 plate appearances, 47.6% hard hits. That's dramatically up over the last 2 seasons. Barrels are up a little, but not nearly as much as those hard hits. He's cheap at 4,200, 3,300. He's up to 6 homers and 10 steals, creating runs 20% better than average. Very solid 284, 332 front end of the triple slash. I think I would have gone Lindor, Marte, Martinez, Alonso, Tyrone Taylor here. Maybe then Harrison Bader, but I'd probably slide Vientos or Alvarez up to that spot, honestly. Bader belongs down here. That's why I think it's a wacky version of the lineup. Tyrone Taylor, even, you could argue, is a better option hitting second against the lefty. So far this year, just 2 home runs and 6 stolen bases, a 73 WRC plus over 130 plate appearances. Not really making killer contact this year, made better contact last year, had a better barrel rate 2 years ago. Strikeout numbers and walk rates are basically exactly the same, so there's a lot of balls in play from him. But it does strike out at a not high clip, but he's gettable for strikeouts. Last year, 10 home runs and 9 steals in 243 effective plate appearances. Year before, 17 home runs and 405 plate appearances. It was kind of sneaky that year for a little bit of power, especially facing lefties. Definitely a good option there. Vientos, 3,600, 3,100, 5 home runs, 320, 381, 587 this season over his first 84 plate appearances. He's been tremendous after taking over that third base job. Very good premium contact. You get Francisco Alvarez back in the lineup after him, another premium right-handed power bat. Just look at the contact from last year. It's diminished early this season. It's only 62 plate appearances so far. Hit a home run early in the season before going on the IL. Just coming back and finding his footing. But if you're going to the Mets in any kind of big way, he should definitely be part of your plans, at least on DraftKings. Jeff McNeil, entirely skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Contact and BABIP-based hitter. He's capable of turning things over on the right day, but just kind of needs good fortune and needs to drop a few base hits in. Not unplayable, but definitely skippable. Otto Lopez, top of the Marlins lineup, 2,900 on DraftKings, just a second baseman, but that's fine. That's where you'd want him. Shortstop, second base, and third on FanDuel for 26. Over 107 plate appearances. His creator runs 8% better than average. He hit a few homers. He's got 3 homers, 5 steals, decent triple slash. 11 homers for Brian De La Cruz in the 2 spot, leads the team. 7 for Josh Bell, 5 for Jake Berger. Berger definitely underperforming his talent, over 184 plate appearances this year. The premium contact is down, but okay. Like if I gave you this for just, you take the name off of it, you'd be like, all right, that's a decent hitter. It basically equals what Dane Myers is doing, so maybe that's not what you'd say. But it's exactly the same almost as what De La Cruz is doing, and you can see the difference in output. So there is definitely some misfortune baked in here for Jake Berger, but he's definitely not doing things exactly the same. I haven't taken a minute to look at his swing or anything like that, but there's definitely something going on with Jake Berger over these 184. The output is way, way down compared to where he should be, compared to where he was last year, and even compared to where he should be on that kind of contact. Jazz Chisholm, 47-33. Pretty affordable for the skill set. Very good premium contact numbers, 9 home runs, 12 steals, a 177 ISO, creating runs 8% better than average, multi-category contributor for cheap pricing, always can fit into a lineup. He'd be the line for like where are the priorities. It's really Jazz and above, and then everybody else down here is just more of a mix and match part at best, and you could probably do better even for the cheap pricing across the slate. Grab a short stack out of here and then mix and match your way through the rest of it. If you had to take somebody from this bottom group, I guess it's Dane Myers based on the 84 WRC plus and 54 plate appearances. There's really not much good down here. Tim Anderson had an okay day yesterday. Stole his 3rd base of the season. I think that was yesterday. But still, overall, Sub Mendoza, 227 on base. Emmanuel Rivera, not much better. Nick Fortes, occasional power contact, but very, very infrequent. So really a 5-man lineup at the top for the Marlins. David Peterson value. Braxton Garrett value. Then, Mets take a big step down, and then Mets bats over Marlins bats. But neither team overly a priority. Phils, we got this lineup in. Curveball at the bottom, Rafael Marchand in the lineup. Yeah, I didn't think he'd be there. Oh, he's on both slates, though. I think he's right-handed. Yep. Oh, no, switch hitter. 25-year-old switch hitting catcher. Had one home run in AAA so far this year, one in A-ball. Last year, over 207 AAA plate appearances. He hit 2 home runs. In 2022, he hit 4 home runs in 263 plate appearances in AAA. Not much of a bat, but looks like a contributor in terms of drawing walks and being reasonably low strikeout. Last year in that AAA sample, 9.7% strikeout rate with an 11.6% walk rate. So it's like Peruse with less power. Anyway, he's the dead min down toward the bottom of the Phillies lineup. So it was an okay projection for that price, a 2.89 against Nick Pivetta in the home run model. So we've got Sanchez on the mound, 8,000 on DraftKings, 8,700 on FanDuel. He's got a 2.71 ERA with a 3.06 xFIP. Both of those numbers are pretty terrific. 1.34 whip is a little bit high for a 7.5% walk rate. 21% strikeouts is a good, not great strikeout rate. Has been terrific at limiting launch angle, limiting premium contact and power. Has me a little bit concerned about those big numbers in the middle for the Red Sox. Typically against a pitcher whose lines look like this, you see a lot more limitation there in the power upside. Those are obviously 2 premium power bats. He was more gettable for total home runs last year, but it also came on a very low launch angle. Suspiciously high barrel rate, so it's another one where typically keeps the ball down, but if he makes a mistake and leaves the ball up, it's just floating there for hitters to tattoo and get the barrel on the ball. So that's where it's a little bit more, call it happenstance, call it luck, call it just missing. But those misses went for home runs that year. So that's where a little bit of it is coming from. But has clearly made some strides in further keeping the ball down. It had a negative 0.8 degree average launch angle this year and just allowed 0.36% home run rate so far. That's got to be 1 home run, I think. Yep, 1 home run allowed all season. That was against the Angels back on April 29th. So he's been tremendous. The DFS output, I think he's averaging a handful of points more than this. I do think there's ceiling beyond these projections. He's got the Red Sox at just a 3.92 implied total. Not completely dead, not completely off the board, especially taking the Fenway Park of it into play. And the fact that some of these guys are just good at getting on base, good at sequencing, good at finding base hits. There's some speed, there's some quality in this Red Sox lineup. So it's an interesting spot, given where Sanchez projects. I can definitely, like I was saying, see a little bit of ceiling on it. But since we're down board for mid-board type prices, with the ceiling really puts him, in this range probably, but these guys all have ceiling beyond these scores. So I don't know that it's a great Chris Sanchez day. I think he's playable, but definitely non-priority. On the other side, Pivetta projects out better, but I have even more concerns about him with the Phillies in town. 3.40 ERA, obviously tremendous number by Stuff Plus so far in his 8 starts, 42 in a third innings. That's 39 points higher than league average. So Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. He's got a 31.1% strikeout rate, a 0.94 whip, a 13% swinging strike rate. He's given up some premium contact for sure. Fly ball pitcher, 10.6% barrels. The hard hits are fine. The exit velo is okay. He's given up some home runs in the 8 starts. Against a somewhat homer-happy team up at the top in this ballpark, doesn't completely fill me with confidence that Pivetta is going to go clean through this game for this money. Last time out, he was great against Atlanta. He could absolutely, if he could do this to Atlanta, although again, Atlanta scored the least runs in the fewest runs in baseball since the end of April. But 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, 2 walks, just 1 hit, no earned runs. 5 1/3 against Detroit, 2 earned, 9 strikeouts in that one with 2 walks. 5 earned runs over just 3 1/3 against Milwaukee, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, back on May 25th. That's a relatively comparable team, I would say. That start was here in Fenway. So that was not, that's like your downside. He's given up 5 twice, but otherwise he hasn't given up more than 2 in a start this year. I just think it's a little bit more difficult to justify with the price against the opponent. I know record-wise, by the way, Philly's better than Milwaukee. He projects here again. It's a good projection. It looks better than Sanchez does just on the surface, but that's a big difference in price between those two guys, and he prices comparable to some of the top options and some of the guys right below him. So I don't know. Challenging decisions between Pivetta, Bibee, Lodolo. Like these three guys are all very challenging decisions today. I don't think one of them is anywhere near safe. They've all got ceiling, they've all got upside, they've all got the potential and the talent to pitch their way through those opponents, regardless of ballpark or situation or anything. But that's certainly a more challenging group of three pitchers than this is. And honestly, you could throw Walker Buehler into that mix as well. You could stretch that to grab him, even at those cheaper prices. I didn't mean to include Garrett. Like that. Those are all interesting decision points today. Any one of them could succeed. I think multiple ones go bust. Phillies bats, they're in play-ish. It's not their best looking spot. But Pivetta, again, gettable for premium contact this season so far. Was gettable for premium contact last year over 142 2/3. He was good, 4.04 ERA with a 3.55 xFIP, a 31.2% strikeout rate. He's a tremendous pitcher, but he's definitely gettable for power and some home runs. If those come with runners on base, we're running that score up and we're chasing them early and getting into the bullpen, and then, we're off and running. Kyle Schwarber pulling a 14+ in the home run model. Bryce Harper not far behind with a 12.8. Alec Boehm at a mid-range number. Bryson Stott mid-range. Nicky Castellanos at 7.8. He's got 9 home runs on the season in a very up and down year, over 273 plate appearances. Schwarb's hit one yesterday for his 13th of the year. Harper's got 15 on the season with a 251 ISO, and he's created runs 55% better than average. Alec Boehm is 29% better than average for run creation with a terrific slash line. Bryson Stott has a very good on base, 18 stolen bases, a little bit of lefty power in that bat. Fills middle infield spots for fair prices at worst. 108 WRC plus for him. Gets a little bit more thin around Whit Merrifield, David Dahl, Rafael Marchand, and Johan Rojas, though. Rojas has 14 stolen bases, but otherwise hasn't been overly effective. Plays a hell of an outfield, 62 WRC plus. Stolen bases and defense. Doesn't really pay the bills fantasy-wise. Dahl is an interesting enough hitter. He's hit 2 home runs in their 10 plate appearances that he's gotten so far for this team. Interesting lefty bat with some skill over time. Cheap enough in the outfield. He's a mix and match part. You can see an 8.07 in the home run model is 3rd highest on the team. So not a guy to sleep on if you're building stacks of Phillies down lineup. And Merrifield could be interesting. I know he hasn't really been great this season. He does have 3 home runs and 6 steals, just a 57 WRC plus, a 115 ISO with a 292 slug and a 250 on base so far this year. Pretty diminished overall in terms of output, but he's low strikeout. Over time, he's had better contact numbers than he does so far this year, but more of a single get on base, steal me a bag kind of a hitter with occasional outbursts of power. Very cheap pricing, multi-position eligible. On the Red Sox side, Jarren Duran from the top of the lineup, lefty is fine, 5,200, 3,600. He's had success against same-handed pitching. We're just looking for him to get on base, steal a couple bags, create a couple runs, and he's good at that. He's also good at hitting the ball hard and driving it. Rob Refsnyder, always a good option against the lefty. 328, 391, 487, and 46% better than average for run creation. Comes on the back of a 400-plus BABIP. We know that he's not a star player, but he's playable, especially against the lefty in the 2 spot. Hitting ahead of Tyler O'Neill and Rafi Devers does him favors as well. O'Neill back in the lineup after dealing with knee pain over the last few days. 11 home runs for him this season, 250 ISO, 133 WRC+. plus. A little bit up and down as the injuries have come and gone for his performance, but overall having a good season when he's in the lineup. Rafi Devers is an absolute star at 3rd base on any slate. 268 ISO, 13 home runs, 49% better than average for run creation. Connor Wong for just 36.29. Can we raise Connor Wong's price at some point? Dude's just slashing 329, 386, 453 this year, creating runs 37% better than average over 189 plate appearances. His premium contact is down with that, too. The 5 home runs are nice. They came early in the season. I think he's got more upside for power overall, but I think I'd rather have him just put up this very effective slash line all season and just be a good hitter. He's underpriced for that spot in the lineup and for the quality of plate appearance that he provides. And there is, again, lurking power there. So love that option at catcher. Interesting catcher one-off, though. Again, Chris Sanchez, not overly gettable for home run upside. Jamie Westbrook for 2,100, 2,200. Hasn't shown much in the show so far this year over 18 plate appearances. Does have some interesting minor league track record. Does have a lot of speed. So if he gets on, it's another player could find you stolen base bonuses. A little bit of upside in scoring there. Bobby Dahlbeck, 2.48 in the home run model, reflects more of Chris Sanchez than it does Bobby Dahlbeck. He's got 1 home run in the show this season. Tremendous track record through the minors. Hit, I think, 26 home runs, I want to say, back in 20, a few years ago for the Red Sox. Hasn't gotten full chances since then. You guys know I like the bat, but this is probably not the ideal spot for Bobby Dahlbeck, considering the negative launch angle and the ability to check power. David Hamilton, Ceddanne Rafaela, both playable from the bottom of the lineup. 13 stolen bases out of Hamilton so far, 289, 344, 446, 121 WRC plus. He's been pretty tremendous for 3,600, 2,700. Fills both middle infield spots on FanDuel, shortstop only on the DraftKings slate. Ceddanne Rafaela, 34.29, 4 positions on FanDuel. Not a terrible mix and match option at worst. He's very cheap now. Flexible part with, prospect pedigree for more upside than we've seen from him so far. 7 home runs, 8 steals are okay for counting stats. Everything else has been pretty weak. Boy, tough one to rank. It's Phillies bats over Red Sox bats for sure. But how does the rest of it go? I guess it's got to be Nick Pivetta, top option, Phillies bats, Chris Sanchez, Red Sox bats. I think that's how I'd have it. It's very close across the board. And while I think they're all playable, I think they're all also avoidable spots. I don't love Pivetta at those prices, but there's really, again, nothing blocking him from having a very successful day. It's the same for Sanchez. Just trying to see if I can, pick a little rock out of the wall here and have it come tumbling down and reveal what's the best option out of this game. Because there are individual things I like. Maybe you're taking the 2 big lefties off the top of the Phillies as just like a 2-man or as one-offs. Maybe you're taking O'Neill and Devers the same way out of the Red Sox side. But again, I don't love the home run upside against Chris Sanchez here. Tricky little spot. Vegas favors the pitching. I think we should too. Pirates and the Cards. Sonny Gray, Bailey Falter. One of these things is not like the other. Sonny Gray pitching to a 3.21 ERA with a 2.65 xFIP. A pretty tremendous 32.8% strikeout rate on excellent strike throwing numbers. Hasn't really been damaged by any kind of premium contact or power this year. He's been pitching really, really well overall this season. 10,000, 11,000 across sites. Very expensive for a very high quality matchup against the Pirates. Last couple times out, he's been a little bit more limited. The limiting factor for Sonny Gray is sometimes depth. So there's maybe some concerns about the super high price on the FanDuel slate, but he projects out very well. Does have the ceiling for 6 clean innings against the Pirates and getting the quality start bonus. Does have the upside for the probability of a win bonus on both sites. So I'm not as concerned as I might otherwise be about the fact that he hasn't pitched into the 6th inning in his last 3 starts, let's say. Against Colorado the last time out, he struck out 5, walked 4, gave up 3 earned runs on just 2 hits in the 4 2/3, faced 20 hitters. 5 innings against Philly at Philly. 4 earned runs allowed, but struck out 10, walked 3, gave up 5 hits. The 10 strikeouts kind of somewhat limited. They don't really offset the runs, but they explain the 10 strikeouts and 3 walks explain the 5 innings. I don't know what the pitch count was. I don't have it in front of me. 5 innings against the Cubs, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, just 1 hit, no runs. Seems like that's one where he probably could have come out and finished the 6th inning. I don't know what happened there. I would have been really disappointed that day to have played Sonny Gray, gotten that result, and not gotten the 6th inning for whatever they were charging for him that day. That kind of sucks. 5 2/3 the start before that. No quality start there. So that's 4 straight without a quality start. 6 innings against the Angels back on May 14th. The start before that. No quality start. He gave up 5 earned runs in that one. 9 strikeouts, but 5 earned runs. 5 innings, 6 run ball, 6 strikeouts against the Brewers. You got to go back to May 3rd to find the last quality start for Sonny Gray. Which is weird for a guy who has a 3.21 ERA, a 2.65 xFIP, like pretty tremendous numbers. Just not paying off that quality start bonus, I guess, is maybe it is more concerning than I'm letting on. I think a lot of it is just weird happenstance in there. But it is kind of concerning since they're asking $11,000 for him on FanDuel. I'd certainly rather have Bryce Miller's upside for 10-3 now. Nothing about that is necessarily predictive, outside of just that is how he's been managed this season, or how his efficiency has been. To start the year, he went 4 quality starts in his first 5. No, excuse me, 3. With very good strikeout totals. Just an interesting stretch for Sonny Gray, but the numbers have been strong. The matchup is obviously very strong. This projected Pirates lineup, 25.4% strikeout so far this season. We've probably got it by now. This confirmed Pirates lineup, 26.1% strikeout so far this season. That said, last year's same group of hitters, 23.5. Call the truth in the middle somewhere. Call it 25%. 1 in 4 strikeout upside for a Sonny Gray that's striking out 32.8%. Sounds like pretty strong upside to me. So the 6 innings will be kind of a key factor for him to pay off that $11,000 on FanDuel. Probably looks better as a DraftKings option for 10. Either way, 8 to 10 strikeout upside probably in play as a ceiling for Sonny Gray here. And 6 clean innings definitely in play. Bailey Falter on the other side for 65.76. As I was saying before, it's gotten there a couple of times, but it's gotten there kind of by the skin of its teeth on some luck and some innings pitched. He is pretty decent for depth. 68 1/3 in 12 starts. That's with a couple short starts in there based on not being that good, giving up a bunch of earned runs. Like in his last start against the Dodgers, he gave up 5, 6 strikeouts, but 2 home runs, 5 earned runs, 8 hits over 4 innings. Was good for 6 innings against Toronto. The start before that at Toronto, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 2 hits, no runs. 7 1/3 against Atlanta. Gave up 3 earned with a homer, struck out just 4, 6 hits. But that 7 1/3 buys you back a little bit of quality on fantasy points getting those outs. Against the Cubs, 7 2/3. Shutout ball, 3 hits, only struck out 2, walked 2. So again, you're just getting points from outs there. But there is that upside. Oddly, he has more quality starts in his last 5 starts than Sonny Gray does. Just 1 win. 3 wins on the season, 1 win in his last, let's call it 8 starts. High point of 8 strikeouts back against Milwaukee on April 23rd. 1 earned run on 3 hits, a homer allowed. Outside of that one, he had the 6 strikeout game in the last one against the Dodgers, which is a good strikeout total against the Dodgers, but he was bad overall in the game. And then the strikeout peak from there is 5. So really, not a good strikeout option, 16.3%. It's right there in front of you. 8.7% swinging, just a 26.1% CSW. More than 15 points below average by Stuff Plus. Giving up home runs and power on a fly ball trajectory on average, going up against a underperforming Cards team, but one that does have a fair amount of power, a good amount of power from the right side on the right day. If Falter's not coming in with a ton of velocity, even Nolan Arenado's slow and extensively long, luxurious swing can get there, maybe it's an okay power day for the Cards. They're showing it a little bit in the home run model. I don't want to take Bailey Falter completely off the board because I do think against the Scuffling Cards team, um, you roll this 100 times, Bailey Falter probably succeeds, not in a slate winning way even, 15 of those times. It's very low probability, but he's kind of a dart throw at 65 SP2 on DraftKings. 76 on FanDuel is a little bit thinner because there's really not a lot of strikeouts. Even if he goes, say, 7 innings, gets the quality start, the Pirates would need to find a way to give him the win to help out there. There's just not a lot of strikeout equity. 21.9% strikeout with some exceptionally low strikeout guys in the lineup for the Cardinals this season. Definitely prefer the Cardinals' bats against Bailey Falter. Not completely dead in the water based on the ability to book some innings, though. Top of the Cardinals lineup, Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, both well above average for run creation in a kind of lousy up and down lineup this season. 220 plate appearances out of Wynn as a high-quality shortstop, 124 WRC+. 3 homers, 8 steals, a very solid triple slash, setting the table very effectively for guys who may or may not clear it for him. Burleson for 37-27, hit 9 home runs in 208 plate appearances, a 172 ISO, 121 WRC plus for him, 283, 314 on the front end of the triple slash. He's got a 9.86 in the home run model today. 42.9% hard hits despite the lefty-lefty. Let's see what his lefty numbers look like. 58 plate appearances, same-handed this year, has not been all that good. 218, 246, 382, but a 164 ISO, 3 of his 9 home runs. For the career, just those 3 home runs, it's only 90 plate appearances against left-handed pitching when we stretch it out for the career. So this is really the first year he's gotten any kind of opportunities against lefties. So maybe a little bit of just power-based upside, maybe a little bit of a downturn in the expectation for hits out of Alec Burleson. But there's quality there, obviously. And again, against Falter, you're not really as worried about the strikeout, and there's going to be contact available against a low strikeout, low walk hitter. So still like Burleson for the money there. Right-handed power out of these two. Again, it's been pretty bad this year. 7 home runs for Goldie, 6 home runs for Arenado. Goldie below average by 11 points, and Arenado right on league average based on a slightly higher on base, slightly better average. But neither one of these guys going quite right. Goldie's got the better contact profile right now, probably the more believable 9.61 in the home run model. Arenado falling off a little bit at 8.40. But still, a good get-right day from the right side for either one of those guys. I think they're going to have their days where they pop. They both have this season so far. But you're dealing with just a 120 ISO out of both of those former elite right-handed power bats. Nolan Gorman making tremendous contact for 43-32. Typically a guy who doesn't get looks against lefties. 15 home runs on the season with a 257 ISO. They just kind of need him today. And if you chase the notion that they get Bailey Falter out of the way early, then you get Nolan Gorman with a couple opportunities probably against a righty. That said, this year, 4 of his home runs have come against same-handed pitching. 213, 294, 443. Much like Alec Burleson, not overly reliable for hits or on base in this situation, but does have a 230 ISO and a 112 WRC+. So both Gorman and Burleson probably going to get skipped a little bit more than the righties are in this lineup for the lefty-lefty of it. And again, against a low strikeout, low velo lefty like Bailey Falter, I'm pretty sure I got that right. Let me just confirm that real quick. Yeah, 92-mile-an-hour four-seamer. I thought so. So against the low strikeout, low velo lefty like this, it's a lot less concerning. So I think there's potentially, not hidden. They'll be played because they're 2 of the better players in this lineup. But it kind of plays up their value a little bit more. 3,500, 2,500 for a catcher who has a little bit of power is kind of interesting. 3 home runs on the season, over 172. Just below average for run creation, a pretty weak ISO. But the ability to make pretty good contact for that price. If you're going to the Cards, it's another potentially forgotten bat down there that does have some quality. Doesn't strike out a ton, Brendan Donovan from the left side is also interesting for the same reasons. Lefty here, 3,600, 2,800. He's kind of bounced along this season just like the rest of these cards have. He's got 4 home runs, but he's got more quality than this. He's a better hitter than what he's been so far this year. So another potentially interesting bat late in the lineup. Dylan Carlson, Michael Ciani, bolt-on parts at the bottom, mix and match type guys. Not a tremendous amount of quality there, but they're very cheap. In a lineup that will get popular, they'll be the lowest owned, cheapest options to throw into, a couple of them for differentiation's sake or for flexibility's sake. If you're going to Pirates against Sonny Gray, it's not a great spot. It's certainly not a spot you want to, or you need to hedge if you're rostering Sonny Gray. That said, he has given up some runs lately. They're not really showing any power. They're not really showing a ton of quality. But there's a few playable options at the top of the board. It's basically the positive run creators on the season. Pretty straightforward. McCutchen, Brian Reynolds, Connor Joe, O'Neill Cruz, their best players. And then maybe throw some Brian Hayes into the mix. Maybe you can stretch for some Nick Gonzalez, who I think is outperforming his talent over 115 plate appearances, 308, 342, 500 with a 132 WRC+, 4 homers, 2 steals. But he's been good, 41-32 at second base. Not a bad play there. Brian Hayes has underperformed his talent in his previous track record of hard hits from a low strikeout, low walk option so far this year. It speaks to me of just, a lot of upside over the next 200 plate appearances at a fair price for Brian Hayes at third base. So definitely a bat that I want in conjunction with these guys if I'm going to Pirates. O'Neill Cruz, their best talent, 18.6% barrels, 53.8% hard hits, 9 home runs, 5 steals. Don't let the results fool you. This is a potential star if you can pull it all together. Just really needs to, we're like one click away from, you've got the combination basically dialed in. We just need that last number on the combination for everything to fall into place for O'Neill Cruz. But he's right there. I mean, this is utterly elite premium contact. So we're not far off the mark despite some ugliness in that triple slash. Just a 102 WRC+, the 33.5% strikeouts certainly don't help. But that is star caliber talent. Connor Joe for 39, 3,000 is fairly priced. 7 home runs, a 175 ISO, creating runs 18% better than average. These are also good prices for the 2 veterans. The one super veteran at the top, 8 home runs, a 338 on base for McCutchen, keeping him relevant, 7% better than average. And then 8 home runs, 5 steals from Brian Reynolds, the former All-Star on this team, 333 on base, 115 WRC+. An effective but not great season so far from Brian Reynolds, but that's why he's only 4,031. We've seen him more expensive than those prices. Edward Olivares, 31-27, 5 home runs over 143 plate appearances, 9% barrels. Believable contact, premium contact and power upside. He hit 12 in 385 last year, hit 4 in 174 the year before with decent triple slashes, so not a completely dead option. Michael A. has not been the productive bottom of the lineup guy that we had last year. Over 147, he's been pretty off this season. 1 home run, 5 steals, sub Mendoza, 41 WRC+. Henry Davis bounced down to the minors, tore up AAA, and then came back up. He's at just 150, 271, 200, but does have a great prospect pedigree. Did have a 41.4% hard hit rate over his 255 last year with 7 home runs. Wasn't great in that stretch either, but a lot of belief in that kid. So not a great spot in the lineup, but a playable part. It's just why are you going to Pirates, right? Sonny Gray on the mound. So playable part within the scheme of the idea of playing Pirates, I should say. Sonny Gray way up top. Cardinals bats definitely in play. A lot of right-handed power showing one of the more playable spots, but a team that comes with an asterisk these days just based on how many times they've let us down and how bad they've been. Pirates just minimally on the board. Bailey Falter just minimally as a cheap dart throw. Yankees with their absurd offense, with the wind apparently blowing out. Going up against, it's an opener first. Dan Altavilla is going to open. Anthony Taylor, Cards are due for one. Yeah, the Cards owe us. Dahlbeck needs to be DFA'd. You need to be DFA'd, Stephen Leibowitz. How dare you? He needs to be traded. I'll give you that. Just dude needs a new home. The Red Sox clearly don't like him. But every now and then he gets limited opportunities. But yeah, they should send him to a team that will actually, will have played him. And they should have done that 2 years ago where he could have had a chance to have an okay career. Now he's just kind of back end, washed up. People think he's terrible. So the Yanks have Cody Poteet going. 6,900 for him on DraftKings. Minimally playable against the Royals team that's showing the second highest total. Also has the wind blowing out. Has shown a decent amount of quality, some power, some speed, etc. this season. Poteet's just been okay over his 3 starts. 18% strikeouts. Has managed to work his way to a 1.72 ERA, but the 3.87 xFIP is more realistic. But even that feels a little bit low for this pitcher. Not nearly a strikeout pitcher, has given up a lot of hard hit and exit velo in the tiny sample, and is vulnerable for more. So at 69, I think he's just like a couple of shares kind of a dart throw if you want to do it, and I really probably wouldn't even advise to. At 83, he's just wildly mispriced on FanDuel. I do not see the value there outside of chasing. I want 5 innings of 4 strikeout, 3-run ball, and maybe a win bonus for my 83 for one pitcher on FanDuel. Doesn't really make sense. As I was saying, the Royals are going to open with Dan Altavilla. He broke into the league in 2016 at age 23. He pitched for a few seasons in a row and then went away at age 28 in 2021. We haven't seen him since. Never threw more than the 46 2/3 innings that he threw back in 2017 for Seattle. Everything has been in relief. This year, he came back to the show at age 31. He threw 1 inning of ball the other day against this Yankees team. He struck out 2, faced 3 hitters. For his career, he's been in the, call it upper 20s, upper mid-20s for strikeouts. All in relief. The reason I'm talking about him at all is not to say that he'd be at all playable. I don't even know where he's priced. I don't really care. It's just about, I think I've got it on this board. Yeah, 55 on FanDuel and 4,000 on the DraftKings slate, but projected for just an inning and less than 2 points over there. Not a playable $4,000 option, I don't think. Just here for an inning, and that inning is going to come against Volpe, Soto, and Judge. So just why would you want to do that? And then Daniel Lynch will come into the game to face, so maybe he comes in the 5 spot to face Verdugo. Depends on what the Yankees did with this lineup. But Daniel Lynch is going to come in and is most likely just going to get pounded by this Yankees team. You bring him in to face Stanton. That's not a great starting point. Torres, this Yankees lineup stacks up pretty strong, righty-lefty, especially compared to how they've been over the last few seasons. But that opener is doomed against these guys, and even if not, then the lefty Lynch gets these guys to start with. Pretty tremendous spot for the Yankees offense at 6.14. They're very expensive up top. They're very affordable through the middle and at the bottom. Makes it easy to put them together with a lot of different teams, a lot of different pitching options. It's a pretty tremendous stack. 17 home runs with a 316, 426, 594 for Juan Soto. Aaron Judge at 309, 437, 712 with a 403 ISO and a 217 WRC+. He's been 117% better than average grading runs despite a really cold April. Anybody remember that at this point? 25 home runs on the season for Judge to lead baseball by several. Ridiculous. Volpe is cheap. 4,700 on DraftKings is pretty cheap. 3,400 on FanDuel. He's slashing 274, 334, 423. Pretty effective up top. 6 home runs, 12 steals. Been a little bit up and down with his performances. I'm pretty sure there's a little dip in there over the last 2 weeks. But overall, for the full season, has made some big strides. We've dramatically lowered the strikeout rate. Not hitting for quite as much power or making quite as much premium contact, but getting on base at a really nice clip and creating runs with the ridiculous hitters behind him. So a killer option at shortstop. Makes for a good 3-man off the top with those 3 guys. Not worried certainly about the opener. Giancarlo Stanton for 4,600, 3,200. We can debate his quality again if you guys want, but hit his 16th home run, 251 ISO. Absolutely murders the ball when he makes contact and is too cheap. Verdugo, 4,000, 3,000. Don't care about lefty-lefty. With Verdugo, very low strikeout, a lot of contact. 8 home runs, 165 ISO, creating runs 13% better than average. Gleyber has really, started to come around. It doesn't really fully look like it in the triple slash yet, but he's been a lot better over the last 30 days or so, the last 3 weeks at least. 5 home runs on the season, 4 stolen bases, 89 WRC plus. Still has a lot of work to do to make that line look pretty. But if you checked it down to just the last month or so, it looks a lot better. Anthony Rizzo, 4,200, 2,700. Can't really say the same things. He does have 7 home runs from the left side, but has been really, really struggling to find his form. 4,200, 2,700, at least he's cheap. Still my favorite among those bottom 3 hitters. I'd rather have Rizzo than DJ, even for a cheaper price. DJ's been the weaker option, but it's pretty close. Jose Trevino, I prefer Austin Wells when he's in the lineup, but I expect it'll be Trevino to take advantage of Daniel Lynch with the lefty on the mound. It's probably going to be the case. Lynch's stats not coming through because of the stupid Daniel Lynch the fourth thing. Forgot to change that back. Over 3 starts, 16 innings this year. He's got a 5.63 ERA with a 5.71 xFIP. He's given up 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo on 46.9% hard hits, 14.3% barrels on a 19.1-degree average launch angle. Can we figure out where the Yankees' home runs might be coming from? This guy is doomed today. I see no reason in the world to play either one of the Royals pitchers. Definitely load up on some Yankees bats where you can afford them. Mix and match your way through that lineup. Mix and match your way through some competing spots. Maybe it's a good team to take a full stack and then go like 2-man from the Phillies or the Red Sox if you can afford it, depending on your lineup, or get to 2 good pitchers with a couple of one-offs in there. Definitely looks like a killer Yankee spot. But again, they're going to be popular. That said, with that popularity, there will be some spots in the lineup that are underappreciated and underowned. These 2 guys will be very popular. He'll be very popular. After you get to here, it thins out pretty quick as far as the popularity and as far as people's perceptions of some of these players. Makes guys like Stanton a bargain. Makes guys like Gleyber a bargain on a lot of these slates. On the Royals side, you can definitely stack up Royals against Cody Poteet. This is not a bad spot to consider a game stack given the wind blowing out again and an 11-run total compared to an 8.5 high on any other game that I expect should come down to an 8. That's a 3-run gap, guys. That's a pretty significant gap. So maybe a spot to consider game stacks. These 2 teams, given all the multi-position on FanDuel, a little bit of multi-position on DraftKings, at least for Sal. There's probably some pretty effective ways to put these 2 teams together. Especially considering the multiple outfielders that you want from the Yankees and really the lack of outfielders in the Royals lineup. Just eyeballing it, these 2 teams click together pretty easily. On DraftKings, you have to decide between Volpe and Witt, obviously. Depends on what you want to pay for there. On FanDuel, that's interesting if you wanted to put both of those guys in that lineup if you go shortstop and util. I think right out of the gate, you're making an interesting construction decision there. Putting both shortstops in that not everybody would arrive at, and probably not the most, not one that would be purely just going through optimizers. So it's probably just an interesting differentiation point there with the 2 shortstops. And then you get some great options. Vinny Pasquantino probably outpacing either of the Yankees' first baseman on the other side. Love his bat, 47.5% hard hits, 9.6% barrels, 7 home runs, and again, I'm just going to keep on repeating it until it comes true. That triple slash will go up given the quality of contact, the infrequency of strikeouts in his profile over the last 2 years. He is just a better hitter than what we've seen so far. And the 7 home runs are great, the 190 ISO is great, the 4% better than average for run creation is fine. I just think there's more to come. 9.64 in the home run model is appealing. 11.44 for Bobby and 11.23 in the home run model for Sal. That stretch of Royals include the 9.99 for Nelson Velasquez, too. That stretch of Royals showing a lot of power against Cody Poteet here. Sal's got 10 home runs on the season, 137 WRC+. Nelson's got 8, but a limited triple slash, 92 WRC+. He's a player who's limited by strikeouts, limited by some swing and miss. But when he connects, capable of driving the ball for a nice score. Nick Lofton for 3,000, 2,400. Effective batting average, good on base, creating runs, but not a lot of power, not a lot of anything else to speak of. More correlated scoring option. It would be maybe an interesting switch given the 299. Again, it's another point I'm gonna keep hammering for this team. Michael Garcia, really a weird fit as the leadoff option for this team. I know he's fast, but that doesn't really matter. This isn't 1982. We don't necessarily build lineups with just the fastest guy in the leadoff spot anymore. Nick Lofton, it's just 80 plate appearances, but a much more effective on base and doesn't really contribute from this spot in the lineup. What are you doing? Resetting the table for Freddie Fermin, Garrett Hampson, and Kyle Isbell? Why not move a more effective Michael Garcia to that spot, or even this spot, move Velasquez down, and give Nick Lofton a shot at leading off here? I think he'd be a more effective option up there than down here. That's just, one man's opinion. Low strikeout, high walk out of him. Killer on base over the 80 plate appearances. It would just be, mix things up a little bit. See what works. I don't think he's going to get on base frequently enough to actually pay off being a good leadoff hitter. I think he's a good hitter. I think he's a good fantasy contributor. I think he's a good player overall with more upside to come in everything that he does. But right now, we're certainly not getting on base with nearly enough quality. Good 44.9% hard hit. Low strikeout, low walk. Ball's in play for sure. But you're probably losing some runs there if you're Kansas City. Freddie Fermin, a capable catcher option. If you wanted to go catcher and first base and catcher with those two, it's perfectly fine. On FanDuel, it's less appealing to have him in the util spot. That said, he's got 2 home runs, a 300, 347, 409 with a 115 WRC plus over 118. He's a quality, limited cheap catcher option. Hampson is just kind of a playable part. He's got 5 stolen bases and okay triples, pretty good looking triple slash over 90 actually. We've seen him over time just be a limited option, but a flexible piece if you're building a bunch of Royal stacks. Kyle Isbell, similar, 4 home runs, 4 steals over 178, pretty weak triple slash out of him, 72 WRC plus, but a mix and match kind of an option. Limited barrels, okay, average-ish kind of a hard hit rate, low strikeout, low walk. So on the right day, you get 2-3 balls in play that are well struck and maybe a couple of hits out of them, and then he correlates back to the top of the lineup. But the ideal options, kind of the real quality cuts off in like the 5 spot, and then I think you get 2 good bolt-ons here. So, 7 and above are your priority bats for the Royals. Yankees bats. Somewhere up there. Royals bats also. If we're doing that kind of a scale, got to be above the camera line anyway. Pretty good looking spot for the Royals. I don't really want either of these pitchers. If you're taking a pitcher out of this game, it's Cody Poteet, and it's only on DraftKings. But I don't think you're doing that. Wouldn't take either of the Royals pitchers. If Larry was holding a gun to my head, I'd just tell him, pull the trigger, pal. I don't want those Royals. Although that said, if Larry was actually holding a gun to my head, I guess I'd say Daniel Lynch because I'm going to get more innings out of him, probably. Mamba says, Andy, Lane, Larry, Lone, Larry, Steve. What's up, legends? Mamba's here. What's going on, Mamba? The Twins scored 17. Jeezy crazy. It's all because I took freaking Willie Castro off my team. What did he do? I know he had a home run early. It's going to piss me off. I'm sure he had a gigantic day. Three for 5. A home run, just 1 RBI, 2 runs scored. Yeah, that was a productive day for a guy who had a big day yesterday as well. Damn it. Let's go second half of the week for Ryan Bliss. That was probably not the right move. Just thought I was going to try and pick off some cheap stolen bases. Oh, Larry, I just know you love those comparisons. Yeah, I knew about the home run already, but yeah, that's annoying. I shouldn't have made that move. Trying to grab those cheap steals. Steven saying, send him to a team that send Bobby Dahlbeck to a team that enjoys a 40% strikeout rate at first base. Hey, look, nobody's saying he's not going to strike out. I'm saying if you give him a lot of opportunities, he's going to hit a lot of home runs. But yeah, it's probably more in the high 30s, approaching 40. But a lot of walks. should have a better walk rate than he's had over the last couple of seasons. If you bring the minor league numbers into play, he's double-digit walk rates in most of those seasons with mid-20s to low-30s strikeouts, a lot better there. A lot of power output. And again, did hit 25 home runs in the show in 2021. 240, 298, 494. The walk rate killed him in the on-base department, but still had a 106 WRC+, had a 254 ISO. I will absolutely take that hitter. He's also a good fielder. He's underrated for his ability to play multiple positions. He can play the middle infield spots. He's a gamer. He's been like, look, whatever I have to do to get a job on this team, and they just consistently been like, nah, sorry, guy. No luck. 353 plate appearances in 2022. He hit 12 home runs. Just 215, 283, 369. No real consistency there. Bad year for WRC plus for him. 155 ISO killed him. And then just the last two seasons have been relegated to the minors. But yes, nobody's idea of a star, and now he's 29. So again, that window is probably closed. They needed to trade him like 2 years ago for the benefit of his career and just didn't. Diamondbacks lineup is in. The Angels lineup doesn't look like it's here yet. So I kind of want this one. I was hoping it would be in by the time we talked about this team, given the power that they're showing. Part of that is Taylor Ward came out of last night's game with some back soreness. So who the hell knows if he's in the lineup? That's obviously a gigantic, meatball in this lineup that's potentially pulled from it and would greatly diminish the quality of this lineup. You would still have home run upside around Logan O'Hoppe, a little bit around Kevin Pillar possibly, Luis Renifo maybe. Some of these guys with moderate mid-range type power and potential upside, but no Taylor Ward would definitely damage the quality of this lineup. Joe Adell's not in this projected. I think he's fully healthy and would probably be expected to be in here, but maybe I missed something with Adell. Nope, seems fine. 3 reasons why Joe Adell may be breaking out. 2 ways Angels outfielders still need work. 5 outfielders the Cardinals can trade for at the deadline. Don't know that Joe Adell fixes the Cardinals' problems. So we're looking at the Angels because it's Slate Ciccone on the other side. Basically dead on league average for stuff plus over 41 1/3 at 100.06. 600ths of a point above league average. I don't know. What is that? 1 degree of additional spin on one pitch that he threw? 5.66 ERA and a 4.97 xFIP with a 17.1% strikeout rate, giving up a 5.88% home run rate on 10.9% barrels and 19.5 degrees of launch angle on the average. That's where some of those home run numbers are coming from on the other side for the Angels. That said, this Angels lineup is wildly inconsistent and highly gettable. So I don't think Ciccone is necessarily off the board. 67 on DraftKings seems very, very playable as a bargain bin dart throw SP2 type. 6,400 on FanDuel is notably thinner for a guy who has only completed the 6th inning twice this season, and that came in April 21st and April 27th in 2 back-to-back quality starts. Since then, he's pitched in the 6th inning twice, but has yet to complete it. He's given up 6 earned runs exactly 3 different times this season. Gave up 3 earned runs in his most recent start, 2 earned runs in his first start, then the other 3 are just 1 earned run. Peaked at 8 strikeouts. That was in that good start against Seattle at the beginning of the season. Other than that, his strikeout peak is 4 in any given game. So he doubled his strikeout output in that game against Seattle. That says a lot more about Seattle than it does about Slate Ciccone. 7.7% swinging strikes, 25.1% CSW, giving up all that power. Last year in 27 innings and 4 starts was similar. This looks like basically the same guy, so just add 4 more starts to that pile and it's the exact same numbers. A lot of reason to believe that the Angels could succeed for very fair prices here. I just wish we had this lineup. It's annoying that we don't. Maybe did it come on underdog? Let's see. Nope. Man, slow lineups over the last hour or so. Phillies, Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Bohm, Stott, Merrifield, Dahl, Marchand. We did it. We had that one when we did it. That's right. I forgot Marchand. So Jose Soriano on the other side for the Angels, 7,500 across both sites, going up against a mid-quality Diamondbacks lineup. Has given us innings in his last few starts, at least 6 in the last 4. He went 7 2/3 against Texas back on the 19th, and then exactly 6 in each of his last 3. One against Cleveland, Seattle, and San Diego. In that mix, the Texas start was good. 1 earned run in those 7 2/3, struck out 5, gave up a homer, 2 walks. And then the most recent start against San Diego was pretty good. Struck out just 1 and walked 1, but only 1 earned run, 2 runs on 6 hits. So maybe okay is more accurate than good. He got the win, so DFS-wise it was okay. Against Seattle, he gave up 4, struck out just 3. Against Cleveland, he struck out 8, oddly, against that low strikeout Cleveland squad, but gave up 4 earned. A couple of 6 strikeout games, a few 6 strikeout games. There's a little bit of upside there, but the Diamondbacks relatively low strikeout on their side, a little bit of power, some decent quality, some really struggling players. It's not my favorite spot on the board, but I do think Jose Soriano on either site, a couple of darts, a couple of value bullets is fine. I don't think it's a mistake. Not my one lineup priority. In 20, maybe 2 or 3. Probably in 20 lineups, probably just like 1, 2 on FanDuel, 2, 3, 4-ish, maybe 5 on DraftKings. No, probably not 5. Not 5 out of 20. That seems like a lot. Maybe 3 on DraftKings. A lot of value options on the board today. Between the two teams, I have more faith in the Diamondbacks. The Angels are showing similar upside with a little bit more power upside, though. I think they are a playable value spot. Like I said yesterday about the Rockies, and I'll go back to it, it's probably more a spot from which you can draw a few one-offs or a short stack, 2, 3 players. Stretching for 5 out of this Angels lineup becomes a little bit more problematic, I think. Even with some good prices, some fair positions as they stack up against other teams and with other teams. Definitely a little bit thinner as you go, as you lengthen this. I'd be more looking to pick off some power upside. You do get a very cheap, if this is the lineup, Michael Stefanich in the top spot, 2,100 second and third base. I prefer him at second on the DraftKings slate. Dead Min on FanDuel for 2,000. He's had an effective 11 plate appearances so far. He's 28, huh? He's been 71 plate appearances last year, 69 plate appearances the year before in the show. But in 2023, over 455 plate appearances in AAA, 5 home runs and 8 steals, but a very, very effective 139 WRC plus on 365, 463, 467 triple slash. That's a really, really good slash line. 346 plate appearances in AAA the year before, 2022, 314, 422, 425 with a 121 WRC plus. So some excellent bat on ball skills out of him. Did hit 16 home runs in 2021 in AAA over 458. Showed a little bit of pop that year. Had a 171 ISO and still slashed 334, 408, 505. Why was this guy not promoted up ahead of like the Zach Netos of the world? Hasn't really gotten a shot. And like I said, he's 28 now. Seems like he's got a decent bat. Not a lot of power or speed. I guess he's not a good fielder, it looks like. So maybe he was one of those just like oddly positionless guys. But I mean, if we're just looking at traditional scouting and then just eyeballing some of these numbers, traditional scouting gives him an 80 grade hit tool. And he's certainly proven that up through AAA. Stefanich is not uninteresting for the dead min at second base, guys. 2,100 as a table setter for these guys. That's certainly, if he plays, that's exactly where he should hit in this lineup. God knows what the Angels will actually do. You really, really want Taylor Ward to play today if you're going to the Angels. 14.2% barrels, 44.3% hard hits, 12 home runs, a 199 ISO, 121 WRC plus. He's easily their best player right now. 13.26 reflects that in the home run model, and he's cheap for the quality. A lot of home run potential for Taylor Ward if he's in the lineup. 3 positions for 3,100 for Luis Rengifo. 2 positions on DraftKings for 4,700. Definitely very, very playable. 4 home runs, 17 steals, a 130 WRC plus. Killer triple slash so far for him. Very good option hitting up lineup switch hitter. Willie Calhoun, if he's in the lineup here, you can buy some cheap hard hits out of Calhoun. He's got an okay rating in the home run model. Slashing 288, 325, 398 over 126. He's been all right. He was always supposed to be better than he is. Low strikeout, low walk, so some well-struck balls in play. For the money, it's not bad if you're going to Angels. I'd prefer him either up lineup or down lineup. I don't love him as a cleanup option. Kevin Pillar's been on a tear. 7 home runs, 6 steals, 174 WRC plus, a 265 ISO. Obviously a pretty killer rating in the home run model. Doesn't really strike out. A lot of bat on ball. That said, this is eventually going to cool. He's not going to keep that pace all season. Logan O'Hoppe, 3,900, 2,900, 11.14 to sit second on the team in the home run model. Looks like a pretty great option at catcher. 8 home runs, 179 ISO, 119 WRC plus, 50.3% hard hits, and 9.7% barrels. The barrels are down a little bit year over year. He had like a, third of a season last year. 46.7% hard hits, so the hard hits are up a little bit. Just some happenstance there in the barrels so far, I think. So what I'm saying is additional power upside for Logan O'Hoppe if he normalizes this back to that and that stays up. That'll be interesting. Nolan Shanuel, pretty limited so far this season. 207, 275, 327. Pretty weak. Zach Neto, Mickey Moniak, mix and match parts at the bottom of the lineup. Neto's probably your best quality option for one he fills shortstop for a fair price, and he's been okay. 7 home runs, 8 steals, just 3 points below average for run creation. Shanuel a lot less reliable, and Moniak a lot less reliable than that. Counting stats for cheap prices down the bottom of the lineup. If you go to the Diamondbacks, Corbin Carroll still a mess at the top of the lineup. He's up to 213, 300, 309, 78 WRC plus, 2 homers, 11 steals. Back to the top of the lineup now, costs 45, 3,000. Still a little bit of faith in those prices. Could be cheaper. 51.36 is very fair for Ketel Marte, specifically on DraftKings. 53.8% hard hits out of him, 52.7% hard hits out of Jock Peterson, 49.2% out of Christian Walker. That's a pretty deadly power trio. 13 home runs for Marte, 7 for Peterson in a part-time role, and 12 for Christian Walker. Pretty tremendous list group there. 3-man with just those 3 guys is perfectly playable, but you get quality out of Lourdes Gurriel for a pretty cheap price down lineup. He's got 9 home runs, a 155 ISO, 99 WRC plus, pulling himself back up to respectability after a big dip. Had a hot start, big dip, now kind of finding the quality again. We're up to 254, 293, 409. A lot of work to do in the average and on-base department to have a good season, but the power is there, and the quality is kind of returning to the average department. Jake McCarthy for 39.26, an effective base stealer if he manages to get on. He's good at getting on base. 282, 368 on the front end of the triple slash. His creative runs 24% better than average. Gabriel Moreno, a mix and match part right now at catcher. Like him better when he's hitting up lineup. Blaze Alexander is really interesting down lineup. 3 positions on FanDuel, both middle infield spots on DraftKings. A lot of on-base skills, some power. He's hit 3 home runs and stolen 2 bases over 142 plate appearances while getting on at a 345 clip. Creating runs 16% better than average. Very interesting bat to consider down lineup that I think people will skip. Geraldo Perdomo, okay production over his 32 plate appearances so far. Was up and down last year. Had a disastrous rookie season 2 years ago. But definitely a playable option. Prefer him at second base probably for 23 on FanDuel. 34 at shortstop. There's just a blocker to a lot of shortstop quality. But he's a playable part, and especially if you're stacking this team or stacking this team a lot. It's a good mix and match option and a decent wraparound option. He's a guy with speed who can get on base. So both of these guys are playable wraparounds from the bottom. Stretches this lineup, makes it interesting, makes it also easier to skip Corbin Carroll up top if you wanted to. You take one of these guys, act as though he's the leadoff man ahead of these guys. That works. Diamondbacks bats, but it's not a very big gap than Angels bats, and I think the Angels are very frisky in terms of a value play and some interesting value one-offs or value like 2-3 mans. So they're definitely on the board. And then, man, close projections for the pitching too, huh? I got to take the slight. Well, I was gonna say I got to take a slight strikeout edge with Jose Soriano based on who he is, but that price difference kind of offsets that when they project basically the same. I'm gonna take the matchup with Ciccone. I don't think either pitcher is a priority, but I think both guys are moderately playable from where they're priced. But I'll give the edge slightly to Ciccone since they project basically the same, and he's cheaper in the better matchup facing the Angels. It's just got to manage to watch out for that power, find a few strikeouts along the way, and then Soriano below him. But it's depending on how you look at it, it's just bats or it's four playable corners. The pitchers are not priorities, but they're playable values. Unplayable value here. Really don't think we're going to Jonathan Cannon, even against this this Mariners lineup that's been so shaky, so up and down with so many strikeouts. Let's see if we can convince ourselves otherwise. Yeah, there's some interesting things right here over just 3 starts and 16 2/3. We have track record with him? We don't, right? I don't believe what I just highlighted, by the way, in terms of sustained quality. But let's see. Yeah, I was remembering pretty accurately. Pretty low strikeout through the minors. Low 20s. Peaked at 25%, but that was back in 2022 in Development League Baseball. In any kind of real sense, 22 and change seems to be the peak with some walks in there. So right about here, right around league average. Maybe he grades out to be about an average pitcher. He's certainly got a basically average stuff plus rating. Not a bad walk rate in his 3 starts, 16 2/3, 5.94 ERA, but a 3.35 xFIP is a lot more effective. It's an atrocious whip. We've got to improve that. 10.4% swinging strikes is okay for a young pitcher just finding his way. A lot of barrels, exit velo, a couple of home runs so far. That comes from a 3-inning start against the Red Sox on June 7th. 4 strikeouts, just gave up 3 hits, but came out after 3. Before that, it goes all the way back to April, so that was his first start in like a month and change in the show. 5 innings, gave up 4 earned runs, struck out 5 against Tampa Bay going back to April 27th. Let's see. Did pitch in AAA through that stretch, though. Mostly 4 or 5 inning starts. A lot of short starts in there. Only completed the 6th once. Was giving up some runs, limited strikeout output. Basically, in is who he is, kind of an option. So it's really not encouraging. Given the fact that he does have a little tiny sliver of strikeout stuff, though, I'll put him back on the shelf. I'll put him back on the board, rather. I think 6,000, very, very limited upside value dart that would need to find some strikeouts against this really bad, really heavy strikeout Mariners lineup. It's really thin. I don't think you get there at 6,300 on FanDuel. There's a very good chance that he only throws like 4 and change innings. So even on DraftKings, you're pretty limited. You're also going to be limited by the fact that the White Sox are very limited in terms of their ability to win this game against Bryce Miller, who looks tremendous on the other side. The pitcher we should actually be talking about. 75 2/3 in 13 starts, pitches reliably into and beyond the 6th inning. 3.81 ERA with a 3.81 xFIP. Well, that means he's exactly who he looks like on the surface. 24.1% strikeouts with an 11.3% swinging. Pretty solid there. He's given up some barrels, a lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo. Pretty solid handful of home runs this year. It's been a little bit of a problem for him. 1 home run in the last game. Went 2 starts before that without giving up 1. Gave up 3 to the Yankees, but that's the Yankees. Gave up 2 to the Astros, that's the Astros. 2 to the Rangers, but that's the Rangers. So there's some forgivability around some of those home runs, and home runs are wacky. It doesn't mean that he's not pitching well. He is pitching well. Going up against the worst team in baseball, in the most gettable matchup in baseball, I love the option for Bryce Miller tonight. I think 10-3 is a perfectly fair price to ask for him in that the matchup here on FanDuel, and at 9,000 on DraftKings, he is cheap. That is too cheap for this matchup for this pitcher. So immense upside for Bryce Miller here. Could get dinged by a Lou Bob home run. Maybe you get a Paul DeJong or an odd Gavin Sheets, Andrew Vaughn long ball. But Miller is pretty effective at keeping runners off the bases. Last year, just a 4.8% walk rate over 131 and a third, 25 starts. This year, it's up 7.4% walks in this sample. But even this isn't a bad walk rate. And when you average it out, we're averaging what? That's a 6.1% so far for his career, which is very good. And that's just on brand for what the Mariners like to do. They like these mid-board strikeout, 25, 26% strikeout and a low walk rate types. And it's working really damn well for them. So he's on that list, and he's one of the more effective young pitchers in baseball right now. I like the option a lot. I don't think you need to hedge with White Sox. You can a little based on the power allowed. Maybe you can hedge with some Lou Bob one-offs. Maybe you can hedge with like a Corey Julks, Lou Bob, Gavin Sheets, 3-man. Something along those lines is probably the way to approach it. But I don't think you really need to. Miller is easily good enough to not have to worry about it. They're going to be low owned. There is a little bit of upside again around Luis Robert, 5,000, 3,200. He's got 5 home runs and 59 plate appearances this year, 309 ISO. Him and Royce Lewis are chasing each other for the home run to plate appearance ratio, I think. Nicky Lopez for 27-23. He's very, very cheap. You're just looking for bat on ball contact skills from him. A 0.78 in the home run model is going to be the lowest mark of today, I would think, and he's going to be appreciably below, in the 1 to 2 to 0 kind of range all season. Sheets and Vaughn are just kind of options. They've got 7 home runs apiece. Sheets has created runs 22% better than average in a bad lineup on the back of a 346 on base. Doesn't have a ton going for him. DeJong doesn't have a lot going for him outside of some premium contact and the 13 home runs. He's got a 290 on base. The 250 ISO is great, don't get me wrong, but needs to have guys on base to drive in to really provide a lot of DFS upside in a lineup that's relegated to a sub-3 run implied total today. Not a great option. Lennon Sosa, Oscar Colas, Martin Maldonado, mix and match parts at the absolute best, and they're really not even qualified to do that from the bottom of the lineup. Martin Maldonado's 110 plate appearances this year are like historically bad. A .078, 130, 118 triple slash, a .039 ISO, a negative 31 WRC plus. It is hard to accomplish. If we were playing low ball, he'd be a great option. On the Mariners side, they're easily playable back the other way in this spot. I do think we can target Jonathan Cannon with Mariners a lot more than we use Jonathan Cannon back this way against the Mariners. But they've been unreliable. They've been in that Cardinals bucket where they've let us down a number of times this year. It's not the most comfortable play. We'll see what comes out lineup-wise. But J.P. Crawford off the top. 304 on base this year, was in the 380s last year. Lost most of his quality, but we are still creating runs 2% better than average. He has been on the move a little bit. So he and Julio need to continue their improvement, but we're at least underway, hopefully, with the turnaround for those two hitters. 271, 318, 348 for Julio. He's got 5 home runs and 16 steals, up to a 98 WRC+. Finding some quality along the way, 5,000, 3,300. He's still cheap. Josh Rojas for 38-28, triple position on FanDuel. Don't love him at third on DraftKings. Would rather have him just at second base or maybe in the outfield on the FanDuel slate. He's been effective, 114 WRC+, 3 homers, 6 steals. Dylan Moore probably still out on paternity, so we'll probably get Ryan Bliss again down the bottom of the lineup. Bliss, very, very speedy, a little bit of power, pretty well, highly regarded hit tool. Cheap prices in the middle infield. He's playable in the 9 spot, but it's not ideal. You'd probably just rather go Josh Rojas more of the time. Cal Raleigh, tremendous power from the catcher spot. 7.82 in the home run model today. He's got 12 on the season with a 202 ISO. Switch hitter for very cheap prices. You're just buying immense contact ability. You don't really sweat the triple slash or the strikeout rate or anything with Cal Raleigh. Mitch Haniger, Luke Raley, some playable power from the right side, the left side. 6 home runs apiece so far. 6 in 240 for Haniger, 6 in 170 for Luke Raley. I'd rather have Raley between the two, but I think they're both playable. They're similarly priced, similarly projected on both sites. Tyler Locklear, the rookie, first and third base eligible at 2,200 on DraftKings, 2,300 at third base rather on FanDuel. Over 10 plate appearances, he scored a run, he drove one in, hasn't done a ton, but a very highly regarded kid with some power in his bat. 12.5% barrels in what must be probably one batted ball event, 2 batted ball events, I guess. But he's got believable power upside for a very cheap price late in the lineup against a pitcher who is supposed to be gettable for power here. Dominic Canzone, another player with a lot of premium contact skills. 6 home runs in just 95 plate appearances, a 235 ISO. Hasn't done anything else, but does have appreciable power, appreciable premium contact for just 2,800, 2,300. Very cheap down the bottom of the lineup for this Mariners team on a day where, again, they're one of the more highly projected teams in terms of the implied run total in Vegas. 4th highest on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, excuse me, 4, 5. 5th highest behind the Dodgers. So playable mid-range type of a stack. Catch Cannon on the wrong day, and there's a lot of upside. Bryce Miller way up top. Mariners bats. A couple of Jonathan Cannon dart throws if you're feeling wacky about things today, but most likely he's not going to succeed. And very, very limited options on the White Sox. Maybe a Lou Bob one-off. Last game up, Rangers-Dodgers. Yanks lineup is in. Volpe, Soto, Judge, Stanton, Verdugo, Glaber, Rizzo, Trevino, DJ. Exactly what we looked at. Oh, the White Sox lineup came out. So it's Nicky Lopez, Andrew Vaughn, Sheets, DeYoung. So there's no Luis Robert in the lineup. That's funny. The White Sox just became a complete do not play. There's no reason to go there. Lopez, Vaughn, Sheets, DeYoung, Oscar Colas hitting 5th. What is it? Zach DeLoach, I want to say. DeLoach hitting 6th. Sosa hitting, Lennon Sosa hitting 7th. Corey Julks now hitting 8th. And then Corey Lee catching and hitting 9th. Does not seem to be a good reason to go to the White Sox today. Bump to an already impressive looking Bryce Miller. Doesn't look like we have the Dodgers or the Rangers bats in yet. Again, a lot of playability in these pitchers. I don't think John Gray is necessarily appropriately priced for the slate, given that he's facing the Dodgers. He's just got kind of like a mid-meh kind of projection. But he's talented enough to have a good day against this Dodgers team. That good day probably comes more in the form of like, you know, a 6-inning, 6-strikeout, 3-run kind of a performance that's not great for the money for DFS, but it's effective enough to keep the Dodgers down. They have a disappointing day, etc., etc. More often than not, they're going to beat him and beat him pretty handily. So at these prices, it kind of just becomes unappealing with all the options on the board for value. That's not really true about Walker Buehler. Buehler's the better of these two pitchers. I know it doesn't necessarily look that way in the numbers right now, but I promise Buehler's the better of these two pitchers overall. And he's certainly got the better matchup against a somewhat diminished Rangers team with no Corey Seager in the projected lineup. 11 home runs at the top for Marcus Semien, 13 for Adolis Garcia. But then the next leading home run hitter only has 6 if you go down the board to Jonah Heim. Some struggles for guys like Wyatt Langford. Nathaniel Lowe, not quite on form, although he's getting on base a ton and creating runs. Not exactly a power threat. Josh Smith, not a power threat, despite hitting for average and getting on base a little bit. It's not a great version of the Rangers lineup. So I think Buehler has a much more clear path to success than John Gray does. 8,300 is fair for him on DraftKings. 7,800 is pretty effective for him on FanDuel. You can see it's not like he's projected even into the 30-15 kind of range. A little bit below that. But based on career track record and, again, not necessarily recent performance since coming back to the rotation, I do think there's respectable upside for Walker Buehler here. 4.82 ERA, but a 3.80 xFIP. Not really walking anybody. 21.8% strikeout rate, but certainly believable for more strikeouts over time. Well, not there. Forgot how far back we had to go. 26% over 207 2/3 in 33 starts back in 21. 28.6%, 8 starts in that weird 2020 season, high 20s back all the way in 2019. Over time, this is a ace caliber pitcher. Maybe a tick down from the absolute aces, kind of like I was saying about Bybee. Not a bad comp, probably. Did I just hide all the other years? I did. Oh, well. So, yeah, Buehler's not in any way at the top of the board. No, I don't have to go over as far. Buehler's not in any way at the top of the board, but I think he's on the fair mid-range kind of board. He's definitely in this conversation, guys. He's in this conversation as well. Being the cheapest guy in that conversation of pitchers that I highlighted earlier in the show, where it's just tough spots, tough decisions between all those guys, just by virtue of being the cheapest guy in that group, gives him probably a little bit of an edge over some of those other guys, and also facing the diminished version of the Texas lineup rather than the Cincinnati lineup in Cincinnati, the Cleveland lineup in Cincinnati, or the Phillies lineup in Fenway, probably advantageous. So if you were ranking these guys, I would have no issue putting Buehler above these guys. Certainly capable of matching David Peterson's output, but Peterson's cheaper from the value bin. So Buehler's an intriguing option. He went just 3 in his last start, gave up 3 earned, only struck out 3, 4 total runs, 7 hits. Not a great performance against Pittsburgh in his last one. Struck out 7 Rockies, but walked 4, gave up 3 earned runs, 4 runs on 6 hits. Did go 6 in that one, though. Went 5 2/3 the start before that, gave up 3 earned, 4 strikeouts, and then had that 7 strikeout game over 6 innings with no earned runs and 3 hits against Cincinnati. The thing that I like best about that run of starts is that he pitched into the 6th inning and 3 times in there and completed it twice. I'm less worried about the underperformance in a short start against Pittsburgh, less worried about a short start against the Padres or the Marlins in his first 2 back. As long as we're getting 6 innings, I do think there's clear upside here. You could play Rangers bats against if you took a huge Walker Buehler position. You can hedge with some Rangers bats. Garcia would be a priority. Semien would be a priority. And then for me, it's probably Nathaniel Lowe as the 3rd man in. I really like the run creation ability, the on base. I think he's got more power than he's shown so far this year. We've seen it in years past. A lot of hard hits and barrels and home runs in this 2022 season. He's effectively low strikeout, pretty high walk rate. So it's just a good hitter, especially if he's back in this kind of territory, lefty against the righty. Josh Smith is playable as a cheap option in the middle infield on both sides. Shortstop eligible on both sides. Third base if you wanted him there. I'd rather take him at short. Good on base, good run creator. Not a lot of power, not a lot of speed, but capable of contributing in both categories. Semien is a little bit cheap for his absolute ceiling, but for the performance we've gotten this year, he's about right on both sides. Quality option at second base any given slate, though. Ezekiel Duran for 26-25, 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. Playable part, a lot of mix and match capability there with a quality bat, not a star by any stretch, but good contact last year, had a productive season last year. Wyatt Langford, underperforming expectations over 172 this year, a playable part in a mix and match kind of a sense. Jonah Heim, a little bit of catcher pop, 6 home runs, 80 WRC plus, just a 112 ISO. Getting a little bit thin for Jonah Heim, to be honest. Really needs to find his quality, find his output for power. Travis Jankowski, some speed, some on-base skills from time to time. Not doing it in terms of on-base this year. No real average to speak of over 98 plate appearances. Does have 5 steals. Leody Taveras has 4 homers and 5 steals. Just a 79 WRC+. And then there's the Dodgers going up against John Gray. He does have the 24.5% strikeout rate this year as a nice improvement. 13.4% swinging strikes is outrageous for this pitcher. He's been good at limiting home runs. Launch angles are all right. The premium contact is actually kind of high if you're talking about that kind of launch angle. So this seems more like luck than anything else. Stuff Plus doesn't really like the arsenal to maintain this kind of level of effectiveness over time. So I think it could be a good comeback to earth day for John Gray, which feeds the upside for the Dodgers. But again, they're just 4.6 and change on the run board. Mookie's got 10 home runs and 9 stolen bases, a 166 WRC+. plus. Ohtani, 16 homers and 15 steals, a 173 WRC+. plus. 156 for Freddie, 146 for Will, 145 for Teoscar. That's 5 stars in a row at the top of the lineup. Everybody's got power. Everybody can hit for a little bit of average. Everybody can get on base. They all crush the ball when they make contact. Oddly, only Mookie a substandard barrel rate. All these other guys well into the double digits. Tons and tons of hard hits for everybody. Everybody in that group except for Teoscar is low strikeout. His strikeouts aren't problematic with all the power that he hits for. It's a ridiculous group of 5 hitters. That's a tremendous 5-man if you can figure out how to pay for it on DraftKings. Your average price is $58.60. Good luck. On FanDuel, I know it's 5 when you can only play 4, but it's $3,800. It's a little bit more affordable. Across the top 4, it's $39. Gavin Lux, playable part at the bottom of the lineup, hasn't really done much this season, but I still believe in the talent. Gives you a lefty bat for a cheap price in this lineup at second base, which is a premium upside position. Andy Pajas for $38.27 has definitely done well over 195 plate appearances, 6 early home runs, but has maintained a good triple slash, creating runs in a positive sense, and really doesn't cost anything. A lot of hard hit balls, a lot of barrels so far this season from Andy Pajas, doing what he's supposed to. So I like the option, and I think he's somewhat sneaky down lineup, 5.38 in the home run model. Jason Hayward and Enrique Hernandez, limited mix and match parts, but either one can give you a little bit of any given slate upside. Between the two, I certainly prefer Jason Hayward, but the multi-position on Hernandez on the FanDuel slate is interesting. Just at third base is kind of unfair on DraftKings for $3,000. You don't really want him in that spot, and they know that he plays multiple positions. Kind of sucks. Dodgers bats, Walker Buehler, John Gray, Rangers bats. I think it is 4 playable corners, but really probably more like 2, and they're both on the Dodgers corner. And then you're stretching for John Gray, and then I think you're stretching even more if you go to the Rangers. But playability on all sides here. And that brings us to the end game. Been kind of ignoring chat, not intentionally, accidentally. See what you guys are talking about for a minute. Larry gave us the Yankees lineup probably before I did. Good job, buddy. You guys talking about Willie Mo Pena? I see Steven saying, wait, was it Mo Willie or Willie Mo? I think the latter. Are you talking about Willie Mo Pena? That was part of the Bobby Dahlbeck conversation, I see. Willie Mo, if I remember correctly, never had a good walk rate coming up. I think he was a lot of power, tons and tons of strikeouts, but wasn't a good at drawing walks. I might be wrong. I'm not wrong. Double-digit walks just twice. One of them was in 52 plate appearances in AAA back in 2006. And then the other one was in just 61 plate appearances, so never had a double-digit walk rate in any kind of sustained way. In 1,845 major league plate appearances, he had a 6% walk and a 30.3% strikeout. Did hit for a slightly better average than the Dahlbecks of the world, 250, 303, 445, but that's a substandard on base. 195 ISO with 84 home runs for his career. But yeah, he was a disappointing player. But to the point, he was more a just a total binary home run or bust, hit or miss kind of an option. Where the 3 true outcomes guys, at least typically in full samples, give you some walk rate, give you some additional on base, and gain a little bit of ground for run creation. But yeah, it's not an unreasonable comp to have thrown into the mix. Quad A player is certainly right. The top of the hitting board or the top of the home run board, Mama? I assume you mean the top of the home run board. We can do that first today. It's a guy you might have heard of named Aaron Judge. It's going to be pretty reliable to be the top of the board. A lot of Yankees power showing today. 3 guys well above the magic number, obviously, the prime targets. And then you do go down board before you find anybody else, but not crazy far. Volpe at 7.29, Riz at 6.92. 6.45 for Verdugo. Gleyber's probably above them somewhere, but it's a good mix of options for the ridiculous upside for the Yankees. You've got some Rafi Devers above the magic number, Tyler O'Neill also above the magic number from that Red Sox lineup, looking for a little bit of power in Fenway Park against a pitcher who, again, does not allow home runs this year. A little skeptical about those two, but either one could get there in just a one-off kind of a sense. But skeptical about the overall quality of the upside for that Boston stack. Like the Phillies side of that one a lot better. Phils give you Bryce Harper here and Kyle Schwarber right there against a very good high strikeout Nick Pivetta, but one that does give up some home runs. You got a sneaky David Dahl down here. A couple other Phillies, I'm sure, not far behind in this territory. Taylor Ward, again, I think it's critical to that playability of the Angels' value that you have Taylor Ward in the lineup. Logan O'Hoppe is right there. Kevin Pillar is right there. Renifo, not far off the pace right there. Joe Adell would be in this mix somewhere at the top of the board. Interesting question, actually. They're against a righty. If I give him, let me put Joe Adell in here. I'm sure he's going to be over 10 as well. Yeah. Even hitting 7th, Joe Adell would be at a pretty monstrous 13.3 in the bottom of the lineup. Talking about home run or bust upside from Adell. If he happens to get on, he's got a little bit of speed. He's stolen 9 bases. But there's a lot of power showing for the Angels. It's just a matter of who's in the lineup, and obviously whether it comes through is the key question most of the time. But Slate Ciccone, pretty gettable for home run upside. It's just a matter of whether do they sequence, do they create additional runs, or is it just a little bit of home run upside? Back to the pitching board one last time. 2 tremendous options off the top. Either way you want to play it, salary-wise, ownership-wise, site-to-site, whatever you want to do. I think you should have big shares of both of those guys. I think they look tremendous. Bryce Miller gains even more ground, though, for the lack of Luis Robert in that lineup. So, top option in my mind, Bryce Miller on both sites. Sonny Gray not far off the pace. I love the upside for David Peterson as long as we're getting like 6 innings. I think there's strikeout ability there. It's a killer matchup against the Marlins. Could go bust, but for the money, looks like the best value option, 6,800, 6,300 across sites. Best value option on either site. This is that tough stretch of decisions right there with those 4 out of 5 guys. I think Braxton Garrett is just easier to slot in against the Mets, 73-71. It's not a big investment and just plays more like a value option. That's why he's not highlighted here. He's no sure thing either. Mets are the better of the 2 teams in that game. So I'd rather have David Peterson projected higher. But Garrett is definitely playable at those prices. These 4 highlighted pitchers are all very, very playable. They're all very talented pitchers. It's just challenging matchups in all of them. Cleveland and Cincinnati on both sides of that game is going to be challenging in that hitting environment. The Phillies in Boston is a challenge for Nick Pivetta. No doubt about it. He's got great strikeout stuff, could easily lead the slate today in fantasy scoring. Those Phillies could also get him. Buehler against Texas. We're limited in strikeout output this year. We're limited in innings. It's dicey for Buehler. But I think he plays very well at 78-83 compared to those other guys. But he is also a tough, challenging matchup decision point. Slate Ciccone is just weird value against the Angels. If they don't hit those home runs, he could have a day over 5 or 6 innings. Jose Soriano against Arizona on the other side, I don't really like. I prefer the Ciccone side, just given the price difference. But I do think Soriano is playable. John Gray is playable, so is Chris Sanchez. It's just, given where they're priced and projected, it's just more of a why would you want to go there spot. Chris Sanchez is the guy who's maybe on innings, could be projected 3 points higher on the FanDuel scale. High 20s and a 14-ish kind of a projection, like where Braxton Garrett is maybe. You can give him a little bit more credit, but like I said, it's more on innings than like strikeout upside. Just clean innings out of Chris Sanchez. Bailey Falter, I don't really like. St. Louis pulling a good number against him. Cody Poteet, same thing. Don't really like Kansas City pulling a good number against him. Oddly, Jonathan Cannon against that Seattle team with maybe a little bit of strikeout ability. 6,000, 6,300. It's a dart throw. It's really only on DraftKings. I shouldn't even have said the FanDuel price because he's really not in play over there. And then neither of the Royals pitchers are on the board. Larry saying I went off memory and Terry checking my work. I was more checking mine. I wanted to make sure that I was remembering Willie Mo Pena accurately because that's obviously the most important thing we've talked about today. Clintwood says, I'd say all of my Rangers are underperforming. Yeah, I don't think that's unfair, but they've also got a real crazy ability to coalesce when that lineup comes back together. So I think they can make some moves in terms of a lot of upside. Monty, Definitely, Maldonado is definitely a Raz player. Good stuff, gang. So it's an interesting slate. We've managed to talk about it for a solid little stretch here. 2 hours and 18 minutes on an 8-gamer. Not a lot more to say about it. Any questions, pop into the Discord. I know we're ending before 6 o'clock. It feels weird. We're ending before 2.5, 3 hours. It feels a little bit weird, but we're here at the end of the slate. So I'll get the updates up on the site for the confirmed lineups in the next little bit. I'll be kicking around the Discord for any questions, anything like that. Hit the like, the subscribe. I haven't really plugged anything today. Check out our guys over at acemind.io. Make sure you're going over there. Use their optimizer, use their sim tools, play it for free for 3 days. Check it out. Make sure that you like it. Once you decide you're going to subscribe, promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month. Those guys are killing it over there. It's a really good product, and again, the least expensive in the industry, like by a significant margin compared to what I've seen for any of these other sites that have sim tools. So really interesting guys to check out, and just good dudes who made it. We or those of you who go back to the Awesome days certainly know who they are. They're also very responsive for like customer support and all that stuff too. Pop into our Discord if you're not in there. I'll drop the link again. Been trying to do that more often. It's good for Q&A. It's good for updates. If anything changes at the last minute, I try and ping the channel in there and let people know if somebody scratches or so on and so forth. So make sure you're in there. And follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. Can you see I don't want to end the show? I just kind of want to keep hanging out. But again, really not anything to talk about. You guys want to talk movies? Anybody watch Under Paris? The ridiculous big dumb shark movie on Netflix? We talk about that for a minute. I watched that last night. As big dumb shark movies go, it is definitely a big dumb shark movie. It was a blast, a lot of fun. It's in French, so you can put on the English dub if you prefer that. It's got subtitles. Not quite like Hollywood caliber production, but not Sci-Fi Channel production either. Somewhere safely in the middle. And again, just big dumb shark movie. If you like movies like Deep Blue Sea, it's not Jaws, obviously. Jaws is like a work of art kind of a movie. Jaws is a film. But if you like Deep Blue Sea or Open Water, stuff like that, big dumb shark movies, it'll tickle that itch for you. Scratch that itch. Tickle that itch would be weird. Larry started Presumed Innocent. How was it? I got the reminder. I presume it's the same Presumed Innocent that I know from back in the day, right? The Scott Turow, Harrison Ford was in the movie when they made it a movie originally. I assume it's that same story. It's Jake Gyllenhaal, right? I've heard that's, or at least it looks like it's good. I haven't heard that it's good. Now I have. Larry says it's pretty good so far. I like Gyllenhaal. I think he does good work. And that's a good story, legal thriller story. So curious to see how they do it, if they twist things and make it different. Definitely going to check it out, though. All right, guys, I guess that's about it. Oh, our girl that we were plugging on American Idol back a few weeks ago did not end up winning. I forget whether I ever mentioned that. But she finished, I think, like top 5. Ended up getting a little contract or whatever, so good for her. Yeah, he's the Harrison Ford character. Makes sense. It'd be weird if he was like one of the old man partners in the law firm and he was only in like 20 minutes of the series and they just had somebody else in the lead. Be a little bit strange. All right, guys, I'm going to punch out. We'll get the site updated in the next couple of minutes. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll see you tomorrow.